Hey, here I am. Neil's already being funny in the comments. Wonder how I'm in a different room. I'm in my office. It's kind of an office. It's the piano room. I'm actually set up on the piano, which is why I have this piano light. See? In my face. Lance, Neil is here, and Jocelyn. Good to see you all. Neil's already being funny. Better to be the Eric Liddell of Streaming than the Chuck Liddell. If you're not familiar with mixed martial arts, Chuck Liddell's a famous mixed martial artist. Mandy, good morning. Man, I don't know what to... There's a number of things that I want to talk about this morning, I think. And I want to just open it up and have other people come in if they're interested. Is my audio good? Because I feel echoey in here. Let's see. So I was trying to catch up on, I didn't get all the way through it this morning, but Sherry and Luke Johnson last night did a reading of and then a commentary on, about half of it was a reading. I was putting in tons of, thanks Lance. I was doing tons of comments on it, as I do. That's how you know if I actually watch something. Most of the time, 90% of the time, if I actually watch something, I leave about 50 comments. And give or take, plus or minus 45. And it was excellent because Barfield is excellent. If my good friend Tagrogan is here, Tagrogan, you there? There's my boy, McMo. I'm halfway through your audio, McMo, or a third. I had to pause it. Also, my kids are dirty. Look at this. On the piano, these are just like shards of just like little pieces of a clementine or a tangerine or something. Is that indicative of my parents? How much of it's nature and nurture? When my kids are pig-like, is it because I'm like begets like and I'm a pig? Okay, so T. Grogan, and then look into a mirror and sacrifice a pig. Center myself. What am I saying? So I was listening to that Barfield talk. Grog was there. He's not a big fan of Barfield. And then they read a Navalis quote, which is even more out there. Navalis he's so good. He's one of those things that's just like, this is a deep question. My friend Jess P. and I used to talk about this a lot because this was a question of how can you enable someone to see what they don't see, including yourself? Can you? I don't know. I think this is why Jesus said, seeing they do not see and hearing they do not hear, or for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. And because Barfield's, he's excellent. I don't know. Barfield was let's put this here. Barfield was probably Lewis helped me a lot. I would say Lewis is, I've said this before, my intellectual awakening and growing into maybe the adulthood out of the teenager phase of Douglas Harding type stuff was when my son was, he was, young and he was getting ready for school age. And I was like, I need to figure out education. And so I started reading things. I was reading Lewis. I had read Lewis some, like a lot of evangelicals growing up who are so inclined. I'd tried to read Mere Christianity a number of times. I had read it. It hadn't really stuck. I didn't really get it. I remember the first time I read Lewis, and it was very difficult. And it was beyond me because, again, what you see and hear, an initiation. I hadn't been initiated into that kind of thinking and or that level of thought. And Mere Christianity was really hard, but then I read The Abolition of Man, which is excellent, which is just about education, really. And I read that in conjunction with Rediscovering the Lost Tools of Learning, I think, which is a Dorothy Sayers thing, and the Case for Classical Christian Education by Douglas Murray, Douglas Wilson, who's this Reformed pastor who a lot of people don't like. And so I just saw this comment. Where would one start with Barfield? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, his essays, Barfield's hard. This is what I'm saying. Like, Barfield's very hard. And I don't, anywhere is going to be difficult. And maybe like don't even start with Barfield, you know, maybe don't even do it. I think the article that on, what was the name of it, that Sherry and Luke just read last night on philology. I think it's entitled Philology and the Incarnation. I can't remember what the article is. I have it looked up, or I have it here. Yeah, because they had a link in there. It is just called Philology and the Incarnation by Owen Barfield. There's a link in there. It's not long. They read it last night. It's excellent. But Barfield's just hard. I heard once, because so this is back to my whole circling back to my whole enlightenment or foray into more rigorous intellectual thought. So I read the Lewis Ransom trilogy in conjunction with Abolition of Man, because I heard that Hideous Strength was kind of the nonfiction version of or no, That Hideous Strength is the fictional version of what Lewis is saying in that book, in The Abolition of Man. That's the Men with Chess quote, is this famous quote from there. And I don't know, the Ransom trilogy just blew my mind. I've read it 4 times since. Every time I read it, I learn new things and see new things, and it's excellent. But somehow within all that, I loved Lewis a lot. So I'd gotten into Lewis. I'd read a lot of Lewis, a lot of different Lewis books. The Narnia series, obviously, I grew up with. And then I heard at just various points that I found out more about the Inklings. I found out that he and Barfield were good friends, although they disagreed on things. And there's some great videos. Michael Lady has done some videos on there. It's called like The Great War. There's a book called The Great War of Lewis and Barfield having disagreements. Because here's the thing, you can be great friends and disagree with people on things. You don't have to. You don't have to agree on everything, and you can still be friends. I actually think it's good to have friends with whom you disagree, and because that quote I love, the last remaining acceptable form of bigotry is against those with whom you disagree. And it ought not to be so, my friends. But I found out that Lewis was, there's some Lewis quote which says basically all of his works are kind of like a weak homage to George MacDonald. And then you find out that like G.K. Chesterton and Tolkien and a lot of these guys had a lot of these MacDonald books in like their top 5 most influential books, and that they were all just hugely influenced by George MacDonald. And I was like, okay, why have I not read any George MacDonald? And I can't remember what I first read of George MacDonald. It might have been Lilith. I got his Unspoken Sermons book, and I read, and I don't know why. I don't know. I wish I knew why I started here, but I read his Justice Sermon, and I read Lilith, and it blew my mind. And then, I got into Barfield, and then I heard Lewis said that. I think he said somewhere that essentially I would go get it. But his book, Poetic Diction, it's probably quoted in my copy of Poetic Diction, but Lewis said that essentially anyone who's seeking to be an intellectual in the humanities, he said Poetic Diction is like a must read. So I got that book. I've read parts of it. I haven't read the whole thing. I don't often read whole books. And then I got Saving the Appearances, which I talk about all the time, but I actually haven't read the whole thing. Surprise, surprise. And but it's excellent. I mean, I don't know, that whole book, Saving the Appearances, a case study in idolatry, is huge. Okay, but I don't want to mainly just talk about Barfield. Anyhow, what they said last night was excellent. What was I talking about? But T-Grog doesn't like Barfield. You know, he doesn't find him. But this gets into the whole like salience conversation, which is a bigger conversation in this little corner. Why are some things salient to some people, and why are some things not salient to some people? Why do some people like these experts and not these experts? Why do some people put faith in these things and trust these things and not these things? All knowing is personal. So where do I want to go from here? This kind of one of the things that I definitely want to talk about, because it's been on my radar, is TLC versus Christian YouTube, because I think it's connected to all of these things. Oh man, I just saw this. This is exactly for me, Mandy, too. I don't think so Lilith, when I read it, I don't think I understood the vast majority of what was happening. Fairy stories are weird, especially like McDonald type fairy stories, or like Little Big. I mean, Little Big's a fairy story, but they're not like, you think fairy story and you think, oh, well, they're written for kids. They're not. They're they're like incredibly dense and complicated and intellectual and hard in a lot of ways. And I feel like I understood about 25 to 30% of Lilith when I read it. But I remember distinctly finishing it. I was at this coffee shop and I was just ugly crying. I was sobbing. And I couldn't really, I would say it this way, as I was changed. It's a work of changing your apprehension of what is. It's just like it's like I was in another world after having read Lilith. And there's a number of works of fiction that are like that just transform the way you apprehend reality. And it was very, very excellent. Okay, let me try to recenter myself. TLC versus Christian YouTube. And again, I'm setting that up as a distinction, but a distinction without division. Because Christ, the eternal Tao, everything is included. The identity of identity and not identity, and where will I go to escape your presence? If I ascend to the heights, you're there. If I go down the depths of Sheol, you're there. There is no, there is no escaping. Christ plays an antichrist. So even when I criticize Christian YouTube, and if Sam, if you're out there, my friend, because I know you just put out this video, if you're listening, my buddy Sam Tiedemann, because he just put out this video because we've had private conversations, and Sam's a member of TLC. He's a core member of TLC, but he also is trying to engage Christian YouTube, because he's trying to talk with Gavin Orland. He's trying to talk with people with whom he disagrees. He's trying to have these intellectual conversations. So this is what made me think of it. Paul made good morning, Chad. Paul made this video the other day. What was it? Where it was in his, I think it was his live stream, but Jordan B. Cooper. I don't think Jordan B. Cooper watches these because he's not really a TLCer. He's like a TLC adjacent. He's a Lutheran thinker. Is he a professor? He's a PhD. He's a doctor of theology, I believe, but he's Lutheran and he's a YouTuber. But he's kind of in the Christian YouTube realm. And Sam, a friend of mine, a TLCer, someone that I like, who plays in both these worlds, Christian YouTube and TLC, he told me, like, he's reached out to Gavin Ortland and Jordan B. Cooper multiple times, and they, for whatever reason, don't want to have a conversation with him. I don't want to air out exactly why all those reasons are, or, well, whatever. I'm going to guess what some of the reasons are. This isn't a judgment; it's a guess. I said this to Sam. I don't, because, okay, circling back, PVK made some comment about Jordan B. Cooper in that stream, which I don't remember exactly what he was, but Jordan saw the video, was listening, and made a reply that said something like, I want to just read it. I'm going to look it up. Can I look it up? Sorry, this is not good YouTubing, but I'm going to do it. There I am, showing up streaming. Where was it? It was this video. Christian YouTube boxes were made for people, blah, 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 blah. Let's find the... Hi, I'm Nicole. This is my advertisement. Let's go find this Jordan B. Cooper quote. Heliocentric. So that heliocentric guy who's like he identifies as an atheist, but he goes and reviews all those churches. He was, the video was kind of about him as an illustration, and he engaged in it. So let's find, where are you at, Jordan? How many comments are on this video? Jordan B. Cooper. And I replied, and I haven't looked if he replied to me or not, but I don't think so. But that's also illustrative of what I'm going to talk about here. TLC versus Christian YouTube. And this is I'll talk while I'm looking for the comment. I would argue that Christian YouTube is about, it's the YouTube version of academia, credentialing, status, likes, followers. It's playing the system, it's playing the game, and working the system and working the algorithm for likes, for clicks, for credibility, for credentialing, for whatever. It's using some metric to try to leverage whatever metric you're using for validation. You're seeking, I don't know, followers, likes. You're seeking some form of accreditation and validation through the algorithm and through YouTube to get to, I would say, promulgate your brand, your particular brand and stream and tradition of Christian ideology, honestly. So like, and somewhat it's nested in kind of a polemical Protestant thing. So like Gavin, I understand I'm doing the same thing right here in speaking against Christian YouTube. I get it. But like Gavin Ortland is trying to push his brand of whatever, Reformed Baptist evangelicalism. And so he'll make videos of like, because he recently did some video on like, did Sola Scriptura start in the Reformation, or does it go back to the medieval thing, and is it earlier? And then he'll apply like historical, critical, analytic, academic reasoning in reading texts of like patristics or fathers, and then try to argue that Sola Scriptura or something like it was earlier than the Reformation. But like, without going down the path of like why I don't think that's gonna work or whatever. And Jordan B. Cooper, I haven't followed a lot of his stuff. Like I try to watch Gavin Ortland videos. I can't really, because they just annoy me, if I'm honest. I don't like them. I don't like that game. I'm already lost finding this comment. And then Jordan B. Cooper, I've seen none of his videos. I have engaged with him when he's been in the little corner. So like Paul has talked to him, and I have watched those videos. Other people in the corner have spoken about him, and so then I engage. When people enter the corner, the person-centric area of this little corner of the internet, which is mainly around Paul Vanderklay and the randos, and sometimes juts out to Peugeot or Vervaeke, then I pay attention to it. When it leaves that and goes out into Christian YouTube or Idea Land, I largely don't pay attention to it because I don't care about it, because it's not person-centric. And so, anyhow, okay, I need to go find this comment because I just keep going all over the place. Where is it? Where are you, Jordan? Jordan Cooper, if you're watching this, if I say Jordan B. Cooper 3 times, will he show up? Jordan B. Cooper, Jordan B. Cooper, Jordan B. Cooper. Here it is. Yes. So Jordan B. Cooper, he says, your perception of my work makes me a bit sad, Paul. I have truly never wanted to merely make videos on why people should become Lutherans rather than Calvinists or Roman Catholics. I think Gavin Ortland does. Like so pause on that. but maybe not. I may be judging him. I may be attributing to him his follower stuff. Okay, back to the comment. I have no desire to be seen only as a Protestant apologist. Okay, great. That's what he's saying. These things are certainly part of what I do, but I try to weigh in on much larger conversations. Even in my theological work, bridge building is something that I have very intentionally tried to do. My most often cited publication is a work on theosis. I certainly bring insight from my own intellectual Lutheran tradition, of course. I mean, how could you not? But I have never attempted to create some kind of echo chamber for Lutherans. I'm not even convinced that my primary audience is Lutheran. Have you seen the folks I have given? Have you seen the talks I have given in the Makers of the Modern World series, or the talks I have given on beauty, etiquette, post-liberalism, or rights? And so Phlebas likes him. So Phlebas is in here making a comment. Phlebas, if you're here this morning. So I said to Jordan, my reply was this: are you familiar with the broader TLC conversations about TLC versus Christian YouTube? It is something we're figuring out and trying to talk about well, because in my opinion, they are distinctly different, but there is overlap with certain players. Sam Tiedemann and I have spoken about this some. I've talked about it a lot on live streams. I would say that it's primarily this difference. TLC prioritizes persons and personal knowing. Christian YouTube prioritizes ideas. And this kind of this systemic mechanistic game of credibility outside of the person, credentialing, some kind of credentialing, whatever that metric would be. And I mean, we could talk about that. What does YouTube try to do to validate and credential someone? Like Twitter remember when they had like the blue mark or whatever, like these people, like these are the ones you should listen to, whatever. And everybody has their own box, right? And then I said, edit. For example, I'm legit really good friends with many people in this little corner of the internet, and we talk about all kinds of things, confess, fellowship, etc. It's not really about talking ideas or promulgating any particular tradition or doctrines. All right, and then some other people chimed in. And yeah, Jordan P. Cooper hasn't replied. So then this is something else I want to lay out and then bring people in here because I want to know what other people have to say, including people who disagree with me. So Gavin Ortland put out that video that I was talking about, Sola Scriptura, and then I haven't seen it, but this is where things happen so much. But then he and Father DeYoung, Stephen DeYoung, did I don't know if it was a live stream, but they did a live talk the other day, which is more TLC-ish because it's a conversation. You're not just monologuing or just sharing your ideas, from your white tower. And this is me riffing. This is a little different thing. I'm trying to lay the table for other people to come and talk just with my random thoughts. And not random. Nothing's random. And I'm distracting myself. And I'm talking away from the mic. I should set my mic over here. So Gavin Ortland did that with Stephen DeYoung, which I haven't seen. And then Sam put out a video this morning. What was Sam's video? It was Athanasius was an iconoclast. I think that's, which is interesting, so like, and I would say this to Sam. Sam, if you're watching, I would say this to you, and I have said it to you. I don't know how you could know that, because again, this is like you're taking a analytical approach to discerning text, which I think the lines between exegesis and eisegesis of any text, including the Bible, are difficult to discern. When are you extricating out the authorial intent, whatever the hell that is, from a text, and accurately reproducing that now, remembering? I mean, how could one remember what someone else meant and intended in a text 2,000 years ago if all knowing is only known properly through initiation? This is like the delusion, I think, of academic knowing through analysis versus like the phronema of the church, for example. There's a shorthand for you. There's a lot in there, and I can't even explain it to you. I mean, I could try, but it wouldn't matter unless you trusted me. So, like, was Athanasius an iconoclast? I don't care. I mean, I don't. It's not that I don't care completely. To me, it's more like, what is the harmonious? This is the whole Jordan Daniel Wood of like Neo-Chalcedonianism. He's like, not necessarily that what they said was wrong at Chalcedon, but thinking in an all-encompassing, totalizing, absolutizing way. You think that you understand that now in a academic way as you look back on that text without further interpretation. That's the hard problem of all perception. You're ignoring the fact that human beings have to interpret anything, which is very related to the Barfield conversation of this movement in philology and language of the waves coming into the consciousness of a person and now flowing out of the consciousness of a person, and how this is very McLuhan too, and how language and the languages that you use shape the way that you perceive reality. I need to read that short story, which the movie Arrival is based on, because Arrival is all about this too. What you see and hear depends a lot upon where you're standing and the kind of person you are. The language you speak, the time that you're in, the context in which you've been shaped, it's salience. This is the whole point of salience. All right, I'm going to put out the invite. People can come in and talk. I want to talk about all this stuff. I'll keep riffing on my understanding of Christian YouTube versus TLC, but this is a little bit of what I think is going. It's hard to get a man to see something if his salary depends upon him not seeing it, which is that great quote from, I always mess this up. Come to me. This is me like trying to get the fairies to bring me information, the angels. I can't remember it, but it's true. But I would say it's not even your salary. It's not even your money. That's part of it. But like, if your reputation depends upon you not seeing it, if your status depends upon you not seeing it, like people who are in academia, people who have, okay, this is a practical planning thing for my day. People who have decided to play a game and they're pot invested, they've put their chips in. Signs in the dust. It says your devices are not connected, but I will add you. If you get your tech figured out, I'll add you here. People who have pot committed to a certain game, they don't want to fold. That's what it means to be pot committed for people that aren't familiar with poker. So like when you're betting in a game, there's certain poker players that like once you've invested so many chips into a game, you almost have to see it through to the end because you've invested too much money into that hand. And the statistics and how much money you've put in it, then it's worth for you to see it through to the end. For example, if you decided to play the game of academia and you've gotten a PhD in theology, what happened? And then people value that, your credential. You're an expert. People have used that shorthand of that value to say like, this is a person we should listen to because they have a PhD in theology. And like, is there truth in that? Sure there is. But then this is Christ and Antichrist. But then if that thing has become corrupted and people that are academics are no longer trustworthy because they've lost the essence and the je ne sais quoi that they were trying to capture in that credentialing, and then all of a sudden that shifts, then it moves to you can't capture the spirit. This is my point. And so like, we've learned this through the past 5 years of credentialing, who to trust, who's giving you proper information, who's giving you misinformation, all that kind of thing. Can you really trust the theological academics or the pastors to really tell you the truth? I would say Christian YouTube has its own credentialing thing where it's trying to say like, these are the people you should listen to. Okay, here's private chat. Oops, I didn't know what I clicked on. So Signs in the Dust, feel free to come on. It's a StreamYard link. You can come in here and then you can talk to me and I'll put you up on the screen and we'll talk. But you don't have to. You can if you want. TLC, this is what I would say is, and this is some of the criticisms that we get from the MJs, from the Phleboses. What is the credentialing of TLC? I would argue that TLC is about knowing people. And so part of the credentialing in that is time. You have to spend some time. This is the steep slope part in TLC for people to value what you're going to say. You have to, and some people can shoot up the TLC status rocket higher. Some people, don't. Like, is it merely charisma? Is it being smart? Like, why do people value certain voices in the corner and not others? I don't know. It's hard to say. Now, if TLC becomes preeminent, if TLC becomes like the cool thing, and people are like, oh, like all of a sudden we want to be in TLC. TLC is the thing. This thing is giving me what I want. Then TLC becomes the thing that you can use as mammon to get credentialing. And then all of a sudden you could start to play the game of TLC. And are people doing that? They're always yes and no. I mean, this is the Tao, right? There's always little bits of this in all these things. And so, like, this is what I would argue, I guess, Lance, and then I want to hear what you have to say, is that the Jordan B. Coopers and the Gavin Ortlands don't want to play the TLC game because they have nothing to gain from it. They don't think this is going to get them what they want. Because who are we? We're a bunch of nobodies. We're randos. That's the whole thing. But if there's a shift where all of a sudden this gets you status, people will start playing this game. Neil, this is Mammon. Mammon, Neil. Tom Luke's.
Yeah, one of the things, and I dropped a comment in here just kind of when you were talking about this, is so I'm a trained lawyer, and I can argue either. So if you give me a case, and you do this a lot in law school, but this happens a lot, like your client comes to you and you're on one side or the other, right? Like, and the thing is, I can make compelling, amazing arguments for either side. A really great attorney, sometimes you love the facts a heck of a lot better on your side than the other side. I'm telling you, like, you're like, oh yeah, this is a layup. But most times stuff's kind of in the gray, But you read a brief from the other side, like you're anticipating, and sometimes you're reading a brief and you're like, oh damn, like that's a really good argument. Like, oh geez, now I got to persuade this judge to do something else, right? And I think to some extent, I think that's what you can get into sometimes with exegesis. You were talking about the analytical or whatever. I mean, listen, if you want to make a case for, or even like, and I would say this like with Sam, and I love Sam's one of my very favorite people in this corner. It's not even close, right? But Sam's also a data scientist, so of course he's going to approach things on an analytical space, right? And I think one of the things when you have conversation and dialogos, and I think one of the things that what Paul's trying to draw out is the maybe, and the complexity is everything else, is that you can analytically go in and read particularly some of these ancient texts or whatever, you can make an argument, right? But I think if you pull it out, and I guarantee there are Orthodox scholars that are going to come on and would have a healthy conversation with Sam and would make an entirely different case for that, right? And properly. So I think what you're trying to get at is and I think this applies a little bit some to Christian YouTube, but I think it's a bit of the ethos of the academic side of it to some extent. Is you're getting in here versus the in between, right? Versus the so I think that's what anybody who's trying to look to you, and I think you are living in this Ian McGill Christian, you're trying to point to this thing of the coincidence of opposites always, right? Like that, in a bit of a nutshell, the non-duality of the duality of the non-duality. I don't know how you say that, but I get what you're meaning by
it's always there. It's always there. This is where I'm not making that's why I try to say, like, I'm not playing an either or game. I'm trying to speak against the either or game, and in speaking against the either or game, I'm not playing the either or game.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Luke, and I still catch myself doing this. Like this new way of approaching things. Like there were certain aspects of my life, like I was a divided man, right? So I could sit in a 12-step group and live in a God of your own understanding, sort of an approach, right? And then I would go out and be Christian apologist, right? And then I would be in this. We swim in the milieu of the binary, the either or. Right?
Yeah.
And I think
the predominant thing. Yeah.
And I think technobabble, at the end of the day, at its heart, it is based on it's based on binaries, on off, right? On off, either or.
Yeah.
Like the whole technobabble is like the thing that just destroys any of that. But I fight this all the time, Luke. Like I think I'm doing a better job of living into the mystery of or the I don't know. But dude, everything about me wants to argue one side or the other. Like, you know what I mean? Like wants to argue for a certainty and wants to. I
Yeah.
still fight to see binaries, right, wrong. Like I don't live in a Chinese farmer maybe mindset most of the time. Like I see things as good or bad, this or that, right? So I mean, and I think a lot of that happens. I think a lot of Christian YouTube is just downstream of what we are, and I think my biggest battle, Luke, is my divided manness, trying to live into the mystery and the Nicholas Cusa mystery of the constant unfolding and enfolding and moral. Like, dude, that is so hard to live in.
Yeah, no, totally. So 2 things. I just saw this comment. I'm trying to simultaneously pay attention to comments as I listen to you. So Mark said, been lurking a while here. Maybe a holy fool needs to crash the party. Come on in, buddy. That's why I love this. Is I don't want, or Phlebas said this earlier. I like to highlight criticism. Phlebas, you're one of my great criticizers and pushbacks, and I love it. I feel the love because I know you're also for me, which is great. Like I'm the only honest person. Do I feel like they're following their conscience? Well, so this, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not.
Are.
I'm not.
I'll answer that, Luke. I think they're sincere people.
Yes,
I don't.
I'm not judging their intent.
So with that, I think at a core, I think consciously they absolutely are being honest and true to. I would make the argument that like I don't see any insincerity in that at all, personally.
Right. So I'm not. This is what I would say is I'm not judging their insincerity. So I would quote my last evangelical pastor, which he said, I learned a long time ago to stop judging people's intentions. It's a complete waste of time. Completely agree. Because I don't, I think that the vast majority of people are well-intended, which is great. I'm glad that they're well-intended. But here's the problem is like that I always love to quote, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So like, it's great that everyone's well-intended. I'm trying to argue for wisdom, which has to do with integrity. So this is what I would say, like, this is the distinction I'd maybe make, Phlebas, is not so much, it is kind of an honesty thing, I suppose, but it's more of an integrity thing, is that are they being completely integrated? I'm trying to be. Am I? I don't know. I mean, time's the revelator, and we will see. I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be open to criticism, to pushback. I mean, this is simultaneously where I think we need to move past the place of the last remaining acceptable form of bigotry is against those with whom we disagree. Can someone disagree with me? Can I even criticize Gavin Ortland or Jordan B. Cooper or whatever and not be against them? And like be tribal about that? Like, I don't want to be tribal with people that criticize me. I want them in my tribe. It makes for a healthier tribe. What up, Jeremy?
Hello.
I like that.
I dance on the edges of this little corner. I love it. I've been around since the beginning.
I feel like I've seen your name a lot.
Yeah, I've done well. I've been active in chat lately, but I did a couple of rando videos with Paul too. I'm a former Mormon, current Orthodox.
Okay.
So long time listener, first time caller. But
well, then I like you because you're in my tribe, and now.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, we eased the tension right there. Everything's fine now. No, I really wanted to come in just because I like this space so much. I like the idea of tension that doesn't need to be resolved.
Heck
right?
Yeah,
it's like chess. It's like, you just move a piece there. It doesn't mean you're going to take it. It's just you could. You don't necessarily need to. But I think having an environment, I think it's clear everyone here is pretty high in openness. You have to be to hang out here for any length of time.
Yeah, or you'd have to have a weird big five because you'd be driven nuts if you weren't.
Yeah. Yeah. But I like the idea that we have tension here and that there are different viewpoints that are all kind of leaning on each other and leaning against each other. But that's kind of what holds it up.
Yeah. No, I agree that this is why I talk about TLC versus Christian YouTube. Is, to me, TLC is the antidote for the spirit that I see behind Christian YouTube, which is the spirit that's in the rest of the world, which is why we're all here. So I don't want to turn this thing that is the solution for the rest of the world back into the thing that we're all trying to escape from.
Yeah.
Like that would be crazy to me.
Yeah. It's the tribal warfare here.
Yes.
I keep calling it, this is the tribe of no tribe. These are the people who don't fit in tribes. Right. Even if we are part of tribes, like I'm a happy member of my parish. I'm a very active member of my parish. I love my local parish. I love my local priest. I love my local men's group. But even then,
I like my wife. I don't hate yours.
yeah. But that's a good point. But what I was going to say is, even then, they can only handle so much of this kind of conversation, right? Like your local relationships can only handle so much of deep, heavy conversation because it's too much of a strain. Like my wife, I can't talk to my wife about this stuff. Like she just looks at me like, what are you bringing to me? What is this? Go away. Leave me alone.
Right.
Like, here, have some toast. Like, calm down. Right. And which is good. Like, I need that. She keeps me grounded. And I'm sorry, it looks like I have nuclear winter in the background. It's just kind of
no, that's all good. So to everything that you're saying, so this is where I'll affirm you, and this is where like I'll criticize some Orthodox people. Like there are Orthodox people play this either or tribal winner game all the time. It's ridiculous. That's like my criticism of the Ortho Bros. Or like I saw some comment, like one of the only comments that I saw. I'm gonna read this Jonathan Peugeot comment because I looked it up because Phlebas was telling me about it under that conversation between Ortland and DeYoung. But
which I haven't listened to, by the way.
I haven't listened to either, but I'm going to read the Peugeot comment because whatever, we are in TLC and Peugeot is a guiding light. But what I would say is like one of the only comments that I saw under that conversation when I just briefly looked at it for like a few seconds was a bunch of Orthodox people saying like, well, let's see if, what did he say? Let's see if Gavin Ortland is, doing his selective bias of choosing which early church father to pick. And I mean, I get what they're saying is like, from an Orthodox perspective, the phronema of the church, the tradition, the church speaks as a whole. Like you can sit there and you can pick and choose the same way that people do with the Bible. I want to elevate this text and not this one. Or I want to elevate this one and not this one. But like the phronema of the church is about the tradition speaking as a whole. So and
embodied. It's an incarnate, right? That's it's a whole thing lived, which is very different than a book, some books and some ideas.
Totally. So, and Tayo, I'm glad you're here because I know I wasn't able to follow everything. I was looking for your comments because I know you're annoyed with me, which is great. So I want to hear what you have to say. Can I just read this Peugeot comment first? And then I want you to say whatever you got. So he said, the fact that this video did not end up being about Sola Scriptura, but about Nicaea 2 was a good strategic move on the part of Ortland. Always best to stay on the attack rather than having to defend how much Protestantism is a 6th century innovation, which led to a massive splintering of denominations, all claiming Sola Scriptura. So I don't know, whatever. Let's table that because that's a totally different thing. But Tayo, what up?
Oh, Luke, you're triggering me so much this morning. I don't even.
Let's hope that it's for the sake of heaven and not just for triggering.
Genuinely, okay. So my initial reaction was, okay, I'm done with this, all this shit. This is just, we're all just bullshitting ourselves. This is all bullshit. So that's the reaction you'll get. That's the spirit you'll get in the comments. But then I'm like, okay, that's clearly something in me. So maybe don't push that out there as much, which then begs the question, what am I doing here? The way of thinking is if this is not helping me become more like Christ, I shouldn't be here. Which then led me to what am I actually doing? How is this helping me? And mainly the thing that triggers me is just your inconsistency, Luke. It drives me mad. I want to talk about Christian YouTube versus TLC, but I'm definitely
Right.
not in the either or game. I hope that makes sense to me because it's
Okay. So a similar thing that I would say is like I criticize propositionalism all the time, but I'm not against propositions because you have to use them. I mean, we're sitting here talking using propositions. You know, I'm not opposed to the law, but I'm against legalism. So like I am opposed to either orism and binary thinking, but you have to set up binaries.
okay.
So like the one way that I would affirm you is I'm against. So Peter Rollins spoke about this really well in one of his it's on YouTube, but it's also his podcast on psychoanalyzing Batman, which is fantastic. I've talked about it before, but he speaks about really in there the same when St. Paul says we wage war not against powers and principalities, or we wage war against powers and principalities, not people, not flesh and blood. So what I would say is like what I'm trying to do is criticize a spirit that I see behind the Gavin Ortlands and Christian YouTubers that play this game that I'm talking about. I'm trying to criticize a pattern and a spirit, a principality, not them, because
the pattern you point to that you're trying to criticize is the either or pattern that they engage in. Correct?
A zero-sum competition. Yes, of like trying to it's like I think, and listen, I'll say this to Sam. I love Sam. I've said this explicitly to him on the other thing. I think Sam believes that if everybody believed the truth that he's trying to talk about, biblical Unitarianism, he wants everybody to be a biblical Unitarian because he thinks it's right. He would want to convert the whole world to biblical Unitarianism. You know, and on one hand, we any opinion that we have, like Sam being biblical Unitarian, me being a Trinitarian, we hold those views because we think they're correct. But of course we do. Because how else could it be? I don't hold views that I don't think are correct. I don't think you can. So of course everyone does that. The problem is that I don't, knowing my finitude and my place in history and the fact that I'm not a saint, I don't absolutize my judgment and then prescribe it to the rest of everyone else in the world because they're not me.
But you do. You can't help but do that because if you believe it to be true, you'll have to say, just like you believe that the zero-sum game being played by Christian YouTube isn't. I don't think. Yeah, I think it's just best for me to get out for today.
Well,
my brain is just firing all over the place.
So that's fine. I mean, you can, so like even this is why I try to say like everything is a gift if you receive it as a gift. So like even this, like right now, I'm sure you're feeling discomfort. Extreme. Like right now, you're triggered and maybe angry, maybe whatever. This is the whole Chinese farmer thing. Is this, Sherry and Luke spoke about this really well last night. Like, is this what's happening right now good or bad for you or for me? We'll see. This is why this is why I say, like, even though I'm against exclusivism, I don't want to get rid of the exclusivists.
Yeah.
Because I don't like it, but is it good for me? I don't know. We'll see. I actually believe that the suffering and the trials and the testing of our faith develops perseverance.
That's why I came on. It's like, okay, do I run away from this or do I just press into the discomfort? Okay. I love the people in this space enough to press into discomfort up to a point. But if pressing into discomfort is only worth it if it's going to be to make me more like Christ, that's the end goal. If I'm just going to live in this frustration, then I should probably get off it. And I came on, and I'm not, again, just speaking to you. I know the way I'm seeing you is not the way you are. So that gives me comfort. That tells me, okay, this is my projection, it's my problem. And your intention is to help people become more like Christ. And I can trust in that intention, and that can, that calms me down a little bit. But I feel like you're gaslighting me. That's the best way I can put it. I feel like you're telling me I'm doing this. You're showing me what you're doing and telling me I'm not doing what I'm saying what you're doing. And it's just, yeah. But I love you guys, and I'm just gonna have to go and
I feel you. Thank you for saying that. I mean, I get it. I think.
Well, I think the heart of what you're trying to talk about here, and I just rewatched it. I was rewatching it probably every month or so. Is Ian McGilchrist's Ralston College lecture where he talks about the coincidence of opposites, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, that was an amazing lecture because it kind of distilled like decades worth of examples as he's fighting this fight, and that's why his new book, The Matter with Things, right, is he's trying to get you into this, seeing this in between, so to speak. And for example, he says, you can't make music without the tension of the lyre against the bow, right? He talks about friction, that you need to have friction in order for something to move, but too much friction and it won't. And it's this interplay and this coincidence of opposites. And so for you with Mosaic Vision, what he's really talking about is how you see the world, right? And having a proper perspective. And I think the heart of what you are talking about with this, as I translate Luke, is when you see people, and again, so the coincidence of opposites. So clearly, and we think about right hemisphere, left hemisphere, master and emissary. Ian McGilchrist never says that the left brain is bad. He never says that the propositions are bad. And when you're talking about either orness, like by everything you're saying is like, to say that you're saying propositions don't matter is like not to hear exactly what you're saying. Of course they matter. It's everything in its proper, let's just say, harmony, right?
Yeah, or Vervaeke would call it propositional tyranny. It's elevating it above.
And I think what Ian McGilchrist's fight is, we've moved down this and we're swimming. So he's speaking to this cultural thing. He's not coming at it from a Christian perspective. He's seeing this cultural thing where we've had this shift to where the emissary, the propositional, has tried to reach up and grab the master. And we're swimming in this milieu of either orness, right? And he's like, no, that thing, the matter with things is he's seeing that play out across society. And that's part of this meta crisis, right? And so at its heart, I think what you're trying to communicate is at the heart of what his endeavor is, and what I think a lot of people are seeing. And I think when I hear you talking about this, correct me, I think what your critique is about a lot of Christian YouTube is you would see them having more of a predominant, let's just say, left brain, emissary, propositional dominance. And you're saying we need to come into this place that's more in this coincidence of opposites. Is that fair?
Yeah, so that's part of it. I would probably push even further. It's not even so much that. Like I think TLC should have people that are very left-brained and that probably lean into and advocate for propositional tyranny. I think we should have some of those people in TLC where I wanted to talk about this Foxman comment because it's illustrative too. So he said his wife ran into one of the channels that I've talked about and found the people in the podcast are authentic to her experience. And I'm worried we are excluding based on very little. So here's the thing. I'm not trying to exclude. I would love nothing more than for Gavin Ortland or Jordan B. Cooper to show up right now and tell me exactly all their thoughts and why I'm wrong right now. But that's what TLC does. TLC is about face-to-face conversations with people. Like part of this is a defensiveness on the part of my friend Sam. Like why? Because I know that he's reached out to them. Why won't they talk to him? That's what I would love to know. I would love to know why neither one of those two guys will talk to Sam. And I can't answer that. I don't want to judge them and say it's like for bad reasons or whatever. But, you know, if I had to guess truly, and whether or not they're conscious of this, it's because they don't think they have anything to gain from it. And I would say, why? Why wouldn't you have something? But this is the difference between TLC and Christian YouTube is like, if you're not trying to just increase your status and you're just really trying to learn, wouldn't you want to talk to someone from a different perspective and steelman them the best that you could? I actually want that now. Like,
Yeah.
this is why I want Phlebas to come on here. Who this is what am I highlighting? I'm highlighting the people that are pushing back on me.
Right. No, you desire the opponent processing. And here's the thing that I would say that I think is, if you spend any time watching Sam's channel, I think one of his best qualities is Sam is generally interested and asks great questions of people. He's there to learn and explore and think. And people say things that I know he disagrees with greatly.
And he doesn't highlight it.
And he allows it to pass by.
Yep.
Because that's not the purpose of this conversations. Like, Sam has a humility about himself when he's having conversations that he doesn't have to let, when he's talking with someone, his personal disagreement with them to have to jump into the conversation and change it. And if you've spent any time watching Sam, he does that over and over and over. Like, so when you talk about someone who models like TLC conversation and so on and so forth,
Yep.
I think Sam's at the top of the hierarchy. I mean, he's right up there with the best of the best.
Yeah. In regard to like intellectual conversations, like Sam doesn't have a lot of one other aspect of TLC, which are the personal conversations. We have a lot of conversations that aren't just about ideas. They're about our families. They're about our sin. They're about confession. They're about our struggles. They're about all that kind of stuff. Because like, it's one thing to have intellectual conversations in the abstract out here where like, you know, that's why you can be that theologian in C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce, where all he does is talk about theology and God all day in the gray world.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can do that. Keep it all abstract. Keep it all impersonal. Don't hold
Well,
it.
another thing Sam does is he constantly, if you watch this, like if there's a difficult subject, Sam constantly grabs the complex and then he'll give an example I think he's doing it to ensure he understands that person. Yeah, so he's trying really a good quality is to say something back to someone to see if you're on the same page. But with Sam, although he is hyper smart, he then explains things in a simple way. So if you're watching one of Sam's videos, what I like is, because I'm not as smart as Sam, is he takes these difficult things and like presents them in a way I'm like, oh, okay, God, thanks for making that point, Sam. I can finally kind of understand this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew, Jeremy.
I was gonna say, I'm not here to show for orthodoxy, but I will say why I have been healed there is because I realized that most of my life I was way too left-brained. I was way too propositional, way too abstract, way too separated from my life and lived in my head. And when I went to divine liturgy, there's all this crazy stuff happening. And my left brain just kept saying, what does that mean? What is he doing in that? Why is he doing that? Why are there three of those? What's that? Who's that? Why is he doing that? Why is he coming out of that door and not that door?
Yeah.
And really, like, for the first year, that's what was happening. But after a while, that just goes away because there's no answers.
Because
at least the answers come in weird ways that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
But it gives you a chance. Your left brain just kind of peters out because it's like there's no response, and it kind of just settles into itself, and you settle into your body, and all of a sudden you're having this beautiful right brain experience, and you're living in yourself, and you're living in your body, and you're living with the people around you, and you're standing there loving the people that you have gotten to know because you've had them over for dinner or they've had you over for dinner. And all of a sudden, like, I eased into my body.
Yeah.
And I had been out of it for most of my life.
Dude, beautifully said. I have had the exact same experience. And I think the way that you said it was really great. It's not, and this is why I kind of took a long break from even reading the Bible or anything. I would just go to the liturgy and I would almost just sit there because it's like a balm for what do I think about this? What do I think about this? What do I think about this? And it's just like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not that it doesn't matter, because I think those things are important. This is where I'm coming back around, but it's not preeminent. The divine liturgy is like a medicine for propositional tyranny. It really is. Because like, it just, if that's the game you're playing, you'll be cured if you just keep staying under that flow.
It reminded me. Good morning, fellas. I jumped in finally just because you mentioned enough pushback, and I was like, man, if anybody's got enough disagreeable streak, I can push back gently and lovingly. But anyways, I wanted to just say it reminded me that the image that came to me, Jeremy, was an exhaustion, and I can speak from a lived experience thing. Kind of when my world really fell apart and had a transformative experience from like a very traumatic event. That was the phenomenon, was the there was a relief. When the world collapsed, there was this very paradoxical relief, and what it reminded me was this exhaustion, just this ever pursuing the manipulatable mammonistic goal, swimming in this propositional toxic sewage, just soaking in it for years and years. I knew that had imploded and deteriorated, and there was an exhaustion. There was, and that was like kind of this first breath of the reconnection of the right brain. Then the journey kind of goes on from there, much more deeper and more of a slow burn to on different aspects of my spiritual journey. But I definitely remember that as a kicking off moment and a kicking off phenomenological felt experience, was this exhaustion. And I think I did want to also highlight Lance's comment too, that Ian McGilchrist never denigrate. He denigrates the inversion of the emissary ruling, but he never did. It's just the very Buddhist kind of thing with the musical instrument. The string has to be, there's a creative, beautiful tension that has to be there. And so it's like my way back into Christianity and really into TLC was still very, I'm the cog side nerd. I'm the JV nerd. It's like, that's, where my heart and soul is. That's still very proposition. Like what JV lays out is still a very rigorous, technical, it's kind of one of the things Mark Lefebvre in Navigating Patterns will kind of ding JV for. And it's like, there's still a value there. That's just all I wanted to highlight. It's like, and Luke, you acknowledged it too. You said we have to talk with these propositions. I mean, there can be, more implicit communication, but for this level of, esotericism, you got to have propositions.
Well, and it's unreachable for most people, right? Like that can't be the truth can't be at the top of the tree that takes you 20 years to climb, because most people don't have time. Like I lived with my grandparents my senior year in high school. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because my grandmother lived by the seasons, right? Like she had been a farmer her whole life. She was a peasant, right? My grandma was a peasant, and she'd come in and she's like, "Oh, did you hear I heard the crickets for the first time this year. Oh, I saw the first robin this spring. Oh, did you see there was a mayfly hatch last night? There's going to be 3 more in about 3 weeks. There's going to be another one, and like she just lived in the world, like in her body.
Yep.
Right. If you sat her down and tried to talk to her about like, the Trinity, like she was looking at you like you're crazy. She's just like, what are you talking about? Why are you worried about that? Right? Like, why are you talking like a dumb person? Like a crazy person. That's what she called me all the time. She's like, why are you talking like a crazy person?
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the Rilke quote that I love so much, is the point is to live everything, or it's the wisdom of philosophy is to live it. Or it's like, so Nathan Jacobs was just back on PVK for a long time. I don't know if it's behind the members only wall or whatever, but he's just like this brilliant, like he's very, very smart, but he has said before many times, he's just like, if you're wanting to learn about Orthodoxy from me, he's like, I'm an academic. I can teach you a lot of stuff about it. But he's just like, if you want to know what it really is, like find somebody that's holy. Like, don't like find me. Because it's really about, believe it or not, Christianity is about the incarnation, which is like God becoming a man. God became man that man should become God. So like it's about holiness, which you don't have to be intellectual to be holy. Right. Like a lot of times, that's the whole point of the theologian. It can be a detriment. Yeah. So like that's even what I would say to people that like to Tayo or anything. If what I'm saying isn't helping you, don't listen to me.
I have some thoughts on that. I don't know if we want to hover on there. It comes into it, and it comes into. Good morning, Sherry. I think to me, it's hovering also on a very complex and messy issue, and it's one that I've been kind of in the back of my mind wrestling with a little bit on this humility versus this silver city of a goal. Because here was my question when this kind of controversy was arising in the stream this morning was there's a notion of what if those guys are doing something right, and they could be doing something right and different, but if we think we're doing something right, then why is you kind of articulate towards it, Luke. It's like, why is there not an open invitation for Sam to be a conversational partner? That it seems so obvious, and it makes so much sense. Is there must be something else. And so my question would be is, they have an opportunity to participate in something very similar to TLC. They have an opportunity to participate in TLC. There's a very open door. I mean, you always can get the first chance here for sure.
Right.
And so my question would be for Teo is like, there's a performative. It's not a strict performative contradiction, but it becomes real messy on. Tayo's here. Tayo's spending his attention. I'm here. Let me do the lived experience. I don't want to pick on anyone. I want to be gentle. So I spend my time and attention here. So there's something that I'm seeing over, versus what little attention I would give to Jordan B. Cooper. Though I have given some, because he does, touch on some adjacent topics. But I think there's something more. There's a better telos here, and I think that's why we spin it. To put your money where your mouth is, to put your time and attention where you believe it. That was kind of be my angle on it.
I want to kind of tie on to what you're saying. I love the idea of the holy fool. I love the idea. I love the uncertainty, and some people are really uncomfortable with uncertainty, and I think that's a large part of what informs this, right? Or what causes this situation. Some people just can't sit in uncertainty. I have Protestant friends who are just like, do your salvation? How do you know? And he's just like, no, I don't know. I mean, I believe I believe in the mercy of God, but I don't, I don't deserve it. That's all I know. But what I'm saying is, like, I love the uncertainty here. I love the tension. The tension is what keeps me here. The tension, I listen to Dr. Bo Branson, who's, a philosopher, professor who talks about, and he's Orthodox, and he was talking about the Trinity with Sam. And I learned more about the Orthodox view of the Trinity because of Sam's questions, right? Like, he was able to articulate things in ways because he was being challenged, and it was a very collegial, very friendly relationship. It was a very good faith conversation, right? But that's people have a really difficult time not knowing if the homeless person is crazy or holy. Some people can't stand it. They don't want to talk to homeless people because they don't know if they're holy, and they don't want to have to think about it. And I think that's the issue here. Like, Grim Grizz is like the perfect example of the holy fool, right? It's like, people think he's crazy, and he is. And that's what's beautiful, because he's pointing at the bigger truth. He's pointing at the holiness. And I don't think a lot of, like, some people really want a curated experience. The ancient faith radio is the perfect example. It's like listening to Christian radio in the 2000s. It's boring because you know what you're going to hear before you even hit play. That's why they get 100 views on their videos, because it's boring.
And what is Jordan Peterson
say? Right. It's because it's all curated and they're all credentialed, and you all know they're not going to take risks. They're not going to say things that would challenge themselves, let alone their audience.
Right. That's one of my favorite Jordan Peterson things, is like, if you can predict consistently what someone's going to say all the time, you're not talking to a person. You're talking to an ideology, which is, you're talking to a principality who has possessed the person and is speaking through them. That happens in Christianity all the time. So, Sherry, welcome. I've been promoting your talk last night. It was excellent, even though it was from an English teacher. And Matt's here to push back. I want to hear the pushback, because here's, like, I'm not intentionally shit stirrer. Like, I'm not trying to piss people off, but I've done it consistently my whole life. So I don't know if it's like a, I don't
For
know
you.
if it's a, huh?
Well, I just know the tension of, you know, because I think they're saying is like, how do you know that they're not following their own the logos as they interpret it? You know, that's, I think, kind of trying to steel man the chat's pushback there. But what I would say is that's that perennial question. I think is like, how do I know that TLC is aimed at the Silver City and the Hill? I don't. But I follow exactly. I don't. I'm doing the best I can. I'm wrong in a lot of ways. I'm following my physiology and my logos. I'm following, you know, the distributed cognitions that I participate in the communities and trusted friends that I have. It's like it's an issue. It's an issue.
Can we circle back to Sherry's motherly sigh? That was really good.
I'm so sleepy.
Oh no,
It's mostly a sleepy one.
You're gonna rein us in.
This 24-hour streaming, you know, it's exhausting.
Go for it, Matt.
No, that I was setting you up. I wanted to hear what was gonna come out from that sigh. It sounded like you wanted to take it somewhere.
Not really.
So
Not
Sherry,
really.
Sherry, can I say this? This will maybe go. So I was talking to McMo this morning, just in a private message, because I was watching your stream last night with Luke, which is awesome because, I mean, I'm a big Barfield proponent, obviously, and then you guys were speaking about it really well, and I loved a lot of the illustrations, and you know, our good friend T. Grogan was there, you know, and he was saying a lot of things that, you know, whatever, I don't like, but again, I'm not a fan of excluding him, and I'm glad he's there because this is the thing. T. Grogan is a gift. I think we're learning through it. Like, the goal shouldn't be to just run away from tension and difficulty.
Right.
Discernment is like, there is a time, but it's not every time to run away from that, I suppose, which is the whole idea of heresy. And so I was talking to McMo and I was saying, I think an area where you and I have disagreement at time is because when we were talking on Voxer just the other day, is I'm very prone to, I was telling you that I like to enter into talking to people like T. Grogan or talking to people. I like entering into the criticism. I don't know. I don't know if it's just my first percentile politeness or what it is, because, and my goal isn't to engage in the spirit of criticism or the either or what I call the exclusivist religion on the right side of history. I don't want to debate you. I think a lot of the people that were interacting with T. Grogan last night, just to be frank, weren't doing it well.
I could only I only glanced over at the chat a few times.
Yeah.
And I had the impression it's like everyone was building sandcastles on the beach and he came over and just smashed them to smithereens.
Yes, absolutely.
and then they got mad.
Yes.
That's what happened.
Yes. And that's the thing. What I want to, this is what I was saying to you the other day on Voxer, is that what I want to try to do to model, and maybe this is my, you know, whatever, white savior complex or whatever it is, or it could just be me trying to be Christ to the world and be his hands and feet, is that I want to enter into those conflicts and model what I think a Christian should do in those contexts, which isn't to clap back, which isn't to fight, which isn't trying to win an argument. It's trying to love in whatever situation the context provides, which isn't to point out why T. Grogan is annoying and why he has his dead horse that he wants to beat or whatever. It's none of those things. It's to create a space and be hospitable so that we can all be transformed in the ways that we need to be transformed.
Yeah, totally.
And I think and a lot of times
I'm just not good at that. Like, you know, which is like the whole time you're talking about it, I'm remembering something. It was I was looking after this. It was when I was at the school, and there were 3 single parents there, me, a woman, and a guy. And he was raising a little boy, and the boy was about 4 or 5, I think. And he had to go away for the day, and he asked me if I would look after him. So I was looking after his little boy. And his little boy was, he was a sweet, sweet little guy. But suddenly he was alone without his dad. And I could, he didn't know me all that well, really. Anyway, we were all sitting around talking, and the little guy was there. And he started bugging people, like literally physically bugging them, like poking them, kicking them. We were sitting on the ground in a circle, and he was kind of going around. And it was interfering with the thing that was happening, the conversation, whatever, right?
Yep.
And I couple times I corrected him and said, that's not very nice. Don't do that. Sit down and be good. And he just continued, and it got more and more intense. And I got really angry with this little kid, like furiously angry, right? And I jumped up and I grabbed him basically like under one arm. And I marched off with him, and I was vibrating. I was that angry. Okay.
Yeah.
And I started walking, and I'm asking myself, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? What do you intend to do with this little kid? And then my other self says, I haven't got a clue, but I'm really pissed off. Right. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to keep walking till I have this conversation with myself, because I need to know what I'm doing. I really haven't got a clue. And he's not my kid, right? So I can't speak to him like I would my kid. And I ended up, so at the school, there was this, in one of the main buildings, there was this tower. And I walked in there. I walked into the main building, didn't know where I was going to go. Thought, well, because I don't know where I'm going, I'll go up the tower stairs. So I went up the tower stairs because I was trying to give myself time to think this through. And I got to the top of the stairs, and I knew I was at the end, and I still didn't know what to do. And as I was approaching the top of the stairs, I thought, okay, God, what am I doing? And he said, I got to the top of the stairs, and I just grabbed that little guy, and I held him as close and tight as I could. And he started crying. And I mean, I learned so much from that experience, because I wanted to throw him out the window at the top of the tower. Like, there was a part of me that wanted to do that. But that's not what he needed, right? And I didn't know what he needed until this moment, which completely caught me off guard. Like, I really had no clue till I got to the top of those stairs and put my arms around him. And I'm sure this kid was absolutely terrified. Like, he had no clue where he was headed. He's just under my arm, and he can feel it. He can feel all my anger and my frustration, and and I think it's, I think that's really a lot of what the attention-seeking behavior is about, because that's what he wanted. He wanted someone's attention. And I mean, now later on in my life, I think back to him and I think, well, geez, he had a dad. Like, that's not the same as having a mom. Okay. It just is not. As good as his dad was a dad, not a mother. Right. And, yeah. So I don't know. That's what was going through my mind when you were talking about that. And sometimes I think the best embrace is the one that doesn't, like, for me to have jumped up from that circle and kicked that little kid across the field, wouldn't have been the kind of attention that he needed. And so I just don't do that. It's just, I can't, like, it's really not in me to do that, to have that kind of confrontation with people. And it's not because I don't like confrontation, because believe me, I can do it if I have to. You know?
You
So anyway, that's what came to my mind, Luke, when you were talking.
Well, that was beautiful. I want to say one quick thing, and then Matthew, I think you have a poem, right?
Yeah, a short poem.
Okay,
Short
so
poem.
like, this is a perfect example of this is what I want. I want people sharing personal stories and crying like that. I mean,
Well,
I'm
you'll
not even
always get
kidding.
that from me.
I'm not even
Can I
kidding.
say one thing before we get to the poem? So I was in the chat last night, jumped in. I was a bit late, and there was just a lot of arguing going on in the chat with T-Grug and some others or whatever. And I was there to watch you and Luke. So I didn't participate in that thing because I was like, I just decided not to participate. I was just listening to you guys and trying to participate there. Of course, I always like to throw smart ass jokes in any track comment I'm in. That's kind of my deal. I wish there were GIFs in YouTube comments because that's where my true artistry shows up. But there's a lot of conversation over here in the chat about T-Grog. I would say this: I have no idea why T-Grog is here. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why he could or could not be here. I have no idea. And it's good to have T-Grog here because a lot of people come here and they think like T-Grog. I mean, there were people who can resonate with him. Either they're in T-Grog space or they used to be in T-Grog space. So is T-Grog here for himself? Is he here for others? Don't have any idea. And the other thing that I think about that, which is like, so, if you come into recovery circles, when people first come in, you don't, and this includes me too, they have no idea how to act or react or be a part of something. And like some people can even come in and not want to be there. Like they might be court ordered to be there and they're pissed off and they're angry that they have to be in this AA meeting. And some people just are there long enough to get their card signed so they can get their court thing out. Other people come angry and pissed off, and then the spirit of AA captures them. And unbeknownst to them, they end up staying and participating fully in this program that they think is full of shit and they don't want any part of it or whatever. So the point is like, I'm just open up to the journeys and I have no idea. The thing that I would say that is what I was seeing in that is like, he was not even listening. It wasn't like he was listening to what you guys were talking about in Barfield and then commenting back. Like it wasn't part of the thing that was going on.
No, he was completely absorbed in the conversation in the chat.
Yeah. It was just, which is okay. It was just kind of a set of kind of arguments and things that he was wanting to throw out at people. And it turned into this thing that had nothing to do with the spirit of what you and Luke were doing, Yeah. So again, when it comes to T-Grog, I would say this. I have no idea. I can guess some things, but I have no idea why he's here. And here's the beautiful thing. I don't have to know, because who knows? And how is it going to end up? I don't know. At the end of the day, I just leave that up to, I think the spirit of this corner is strong enough that, we can handle all sorts of things and all sorts of people.
Well, the only thing I said last night was something like, I feel like a teacher and I want to say, stop passing notes. because as a teacher, when you're teaching, and I'm not saying that that's what I was doing last night, but when you're having something to say, like what Luke and I were doing last night, and the whole class is completely absorbed with something else, they're no longer attentive to why they're even there. And so I was speaking to the people who, in my opinion, should have had the strength and the courage to actually reorient their attention, you know? And I think, to be maybe a little harsh, I think that it was a failure on their part to not be able to do that, right? To not be able to turn away. And I'm not saying they had to ignore T-Grog, but they had to refocus their attention. They should have been able to refocus their attention on the reason that they were there in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, you know, T-Grog doesn't bother me. Like, you know, he's going to do what we know he's going to do. It's kind of like what Jeremy was saying about why he doesn't listen to Ancient Faith Radio. You know, you already know what's going to happen or what's going to be said, because you're not speaking to a person, you're speaking to an ideology, right?
Totally. So Matthew has a poem. I don't want us to get too far away from it.
Oh, yeah.
It is a Saturday morning, but I completely agree with that. Like, there are tons, I will say this, as somebody's Orthodox, there's tons of Orthodox people out there that are doing the exact same thing that I'm criticizing.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Well, and just my little 2 cents intuition on it is it reminds me of wanting to be seen. I think that's probably what he's there for. He's wanting to be
Well,
seen.
that's why I brought up
and
the story of the little guy I was
yes,
looking after, because that's all he wanted.
That's
all he
right.
wanted.
It's so
Little
relevant. So
center.
relevant. And my story is it's a very short poem. Centers on a father and son. But anyway, so I'll just read it real quick and we can get back to because I think it is important, the T-Grog, the T-Grog notion. I think it's interesting on the phenomenon that he is, because it's a little bit different than the spirit of TLC. Okay, here we go. A man said to his son, "Master a skill, become truly great, more so than I. If you cannot, become very successful, even more so than I. If you cannot, work the hardest, even harder than I, and with a greater passion. If you cannot, do more for others. It will bring you the most fulfilling joy. If you cannot, love more than I. You can always love more."
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to. Where's that upcycle comment, Luke? It's not.
Oh,
in
I'll
here.
find that. Here.
Yeah. Why is he here? You know, like, I've answered that question, upcycle. I just wanted to say, I think I've answered that a few times. I'm here because I feel like God wants me to learn how to articulate everything that I've been experiencing with him for the last 23 years. And I like to qualify that with, not because I think you all need to hear it. That's not the reason. The reason is because I need to say it.
Yep.
And this is kind of what Barfield was talking about in the essay last night, because he talked about this inflowing tide and then this outflowing tide. And he pinpoints that to Christ entering into the world, right? Where we were being filled up by the world, you know, like it was the representations, Barfield would say, the forms, George MacDonald would say, is where we derive our language. And so we basically what do you call that? We topped out, like we were able to articulate or create language thanks to the things around us, right? Because that's where we derive our language. We use something from the material world to speak about the immaterial world, the thing that's inside of us. And now the language has to be outflowing, right? And this gets back to Tomberg talking about mysticism as a form of, you know, meditation, contemplation, and sacred magic. That's the order of things, right? And so anyway, I just wanted to say that to upcycle, that I've said that a few times now, that the reason I'm here is because I need to learn how to articulate my thoughts. And because this is a space in which people can stumble around and make mistakes and say heretical things, seemingly heretical things, I I couldn't do that in a lot of spaces. I couldn't practice saying what I've taken in, kind of thing, right? So yeah.
Where are you here, Luke?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think about that. I think there's many reasons. I have the similar thing that most people have had, is that it's not that I didn't have a place to say all the things that I say, because I do say this all the time. I say all this same stuff to everybody I talk to. Like, I'm not, whether or not they want to hear it, probably. I mean, I think I have a little bit more tact. Like, I mean, I've said this kind of stuff to my mother my whole life too. And like, we've gotten to a place where pretty explicitly she doesn't want to hear it. So I don't say it to her anymore out of love. But I haven't ever found a place where I have the same kind of resonances that I have here. I mean, there's something unique to this place where when I just speak and riff and share my heart, like it doesn't just annoy people like it does sometimes. It also helps people, and it resonates with people, and people, it's like I said to Julian once, I guess, or Julian said this to me once after one of my live streams, that I just want to be seen and held, I mean, like a lot of us, and I think there's an aspect of, I want to exercise the demons of my religious upbringing. I want to, all of my, like the confessionalism, all those things that these principalities that I think I've been waging war with my whole upbringing, and that I've seen in all these different church iterations that I've tried to talk about, and people just, kept trying to just be like, well, we either need to excommunicate you, or we need to find you a different church or something. And I was like, no, I don't want to find a different church. Like, I want to talk about that with you. Like, I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. We can do that here. And I'm adamant in even this stream, I don't want to turn, like I said, I don't want people to turn this thing in TLC that most people have found like a respite from the storm here. I don't want it to turn into the storm, the thing that we're all escaping from, the thing that this has been a solution to.
Yeah, but I think also, Luke, like in that regard, just jumping on there on the end of that, there's a thing about our culture today that is really annoys me, and that is that we try to avoid the storm. And the storm is always coming, right? And I think this is why, I don't know who it was. Is it Paul or Jesus that said, be ready to give an answer for the hope that is in you, right? A lot of people think that means you have to have all your points of confessionalism down.
Right.
But it's the hope that is in you, right? So it's personal. And that, yeah, I just don't think we can avoid the storm, nor do I think we should want to, because it's the thing that makes us better, right? Like Luke and I talked about, Barfield talks about original participation, withdrawal, and final participation, and Luke was sharing how that really makes him sad, right? When he you know, he thinks Barfield is condemning something, let's say, like the way that we are today, you know, which is, you know, we're all on board with that. Oh yeah, it's terrible and blah, 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 right? But then Barfield will turn around and say, but we have to go through it, right? Like it's the way that our consciousness is redeemed.
Yeah. What if the cross isn't plan B, but it's just how a human being is created?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, everybody knows the whole anti-fragile spiel, right? Like that's basically what I'm talking about. So,
Matthew, why are you here?
That's a good question. I think there's a little bit of balance between the Sherry and the Luke position there of wanting the respite of having, you know, the kind of a little bit of shelter in the storm, but also recognizing, I think Sherry's right that, you know, the storm is you can avoid it to the fullest extent. You know, there's always going to be you know, we'll just keep on hitting that drum, that there's always going to be a tension there. But I think there's also something special about the way we are. I think it comes in with that stance, the existential stance we all share, with the care we come into these conversations, these deep conversations that touch on these deep ideas. It's like that's probably the most optimal way to handle the storm, and that's the respite we get. For me, what I'm coming in here for was to participate in the serious play. I'm going to do the Christian Baxter move of I've been on this kind of journey, this intellectual, spiritual, you know, autodidactic journey through YouTube for so many years, collecting. You know, one of my first times I got on video was on this Saturday morning Grail Country stream with Luke and Nate. And I mentioned to Luke, you know, I had been collecting thoughts and I just wanted to come and play with him and participate in the conversation. And so that's kind of the reason for me was I had all this background knowledge, and I saw there was an emerging community that I was participating, you know, as a lurker and then just commenting. And I just want to kind of take a further step on, you know, jumping on more live streams. I don't have a channel or anything like that. But yeah, to do this sense making dojo that is that has this foundation of love and care in it, that affords all this high level. Like one of the things I think people kind of might be getting frustrated with Luke a little bit is that this is this thing I've been hitting on. There's so much brilliance here. Luke is you know, I'm gonna blow some smoke up his dress. He's a brilliant mind here. Okay, he'll hit you with some philosophical rigor, and so the fact that he's able to make these. He's able to sit in that paradox, like you mentioned earlier, Lance. We're able to sit in that paradox. Luke is a perfect exemplification of that, and do these conversational jujitsu, you know, to where he's comfortable in his position to. And I think this also touches into Jeremy's point earlier with we're comfortable. Our worldview here is comfortable with the blurriness, the periphery. So we have this sacred learned ignorance of we're not ever going to have all the answers, so we're open to all this dynamic conversational relating and maneuvering and playing. And so this is why I can't get enough of it. It's the cutting edge conversations. You never know where it'll go. It's all, you know, scaffolded with this cognitive science, you know, cutting edge elegance. It's a special soup for me, man.
Matt,
I'm
coming to you.
I just wanted to, the storm is what precisely? Not sure I grasp it. The thing that's interesting about our lives as Christians is that we're promised the peace that passes understanding. And I mean, if you're in a peaceful place, like Dostoevsky describes, how does he describe this, like Garden of Eden where everybody's eating grapes and, you know, it's in Notes from the Underground, I think.
Yes. Eat cakes and busy themselves.
Yeah. Like then any peace that you feel is not beyond understanding. Okay. Like that's totally graspable peace. You're like, well, of course I feel peace, right? I'm in the hot tub. Why wouldn't I? You know? But the peace that passes understanding is when you're in the middle, when you're in the eye of the hurricane. Okay? That's when it passes understanding. That's when people look at you and go, what? Why are you so peaceful?
Amen.
So that's the storm.
Well,
And if
Cindy,
that's the promise we have, that we'll have the peace that passes understanding, then guess what?
yeah,
Only one
Matt
place
dropped
to have
off. I
that
guess
one.
I'm going around here. I think this is really interesting. So,
I-
Suji, what brings you here?
Yeah, I was. There is a topic that has been mentioned about the storm and about pain, and I am not know if I am actually ready to talk about it. But at least I mentioned at in my first time that it's about loneliness, this space as well. I wrote my tag virtually not alone, and I mentioned that I don't actually believe that somebody can be virtually not alone, but I'm here because maybe I'm asking you to help my unbelief. Way, but you know, I am in a point where it's bad. I hope that is a temporary thing, and to cope with it, say, okay, let's just have some internet
company
fellowship, company.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing. And then the other things that that touch me in a way from what you say, Shari, about the storm is I am actually in pain, physical pain. I got sick and I'm in chronic pain, and not surprisingly, as a Christian, I'm going through that with some thankfulness and and in a way I can totally see that I'm getting purified, if you want to say so, or sanctified, or blessed through that, every kind of word that you normally would use. And even if I'm thankful to the Lord for the way that He uses the circumstances. I don't think that pain is good. Every day I pray the Lord's Prayer, and I ask the Lord, lead us not into the trial or into temptation or into the test. Lord, do not put me into the pain. Yes, it is the way that we are transformed as human beings, and we are reborn. And the Lord and the Apostle teach us that is in different way is unavoidable. It's part of the life. You pick up the cross, and even if you are not a believer, you are going through a moment of suffering, and you have to look for a savior at this point. But the storm is not good. In the same way that I will, that is in a way is a gift to humanity. That's some very orthodox interpretation of our mortality. We have been gifted with the capacity to repent of our sin. That is our mortality. That is our mortal body. We can repent, and because there is death, there is a possibility of repentance. but that doesn't mean that is good. That
Yeah.
is an enemy to God, and
Mhm.
that will be killed. That will be cast to the lake of fire for eternity, to burn together with Satan and his angel. So I do not wish to anybody to go through suffering, even if we have very well known that suffering is redemptive.
Mhm.
But I pray the Lord's Prayer: Lord, lead us not into the test, but deliver us from the evil one. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Tunji.
So I'm not 100% sure on exactly what the storm is still. Like, is it just the chaos of life itself when you're not peaceful in
Well, I
faith?
mean,
Or
okay, if you want to make it really basic, which is always what I do,
yes,
is
yes.
we got kicked out of the garden, man. We're not in it anymore. Okay, we're in the
Okay.
thorns. We're in the
Yep.
thorns. We will suffer. We will have pain. Okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even further, like the unnecessary suffering that we kind of incur. Something about, you know, the sinning nature came to mind. But yeah, or even we can go even more technical. In my opinion, we could go kind of to you know, physicalist, materialistic flood of, you know, the modern, you know, the modern monoculture, you know, that kind of storm, chaotic storm.
Like modernism, postmodernism type thing. Like
Yeah,
the monoculture.
yeah. I mean, and
Okay.
I think those are just kind of the, you know, the leading branches of it, right? There's a big nasty kind of a root system to that weed. But
So when you say the storm is coming, it's like something's getting worse. Like
No,
in
no,
that
no,
way.
no, no. No, don't get me wrong.
The original reference was Luke. Luke said that TLC provides some respite from a metaphorical storm that can be, you know, the I guess, you know, the everyday, you know, humdrum of, like I said, I would say dealing in this kind of, and dealing in the time and culture that we're dealing with, you know, and I think Sherry just kind of took it all the way to, you know, the mythical and symbolic of original sin. We're out of the garden, you know, we are in this fallen world. I think all of these metaphors are kind of hovering over the same constellation.
Yeah, and my point was simply that we, you know, we can't do something to avoid something else, right?
Yeah.
Like if we do that, then we're just going to be frustrated for the rest of our lives, because there will always be that stumbling stone, right?
Okay, I get it. I understand now. It's like I was trying to understand like the original metaphor, and like it seemed like the explanations were all metaphors themselves, and I couldn't like get to like
Metaphors
the
all the way
pragmatic
down.
sort of underlying thing, like what it was. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand now what you mean.
I just wanted to ask Matt why he's here, because he's slipping under the radar.
With that excellent shirt.
I'm trying to get my maid and my mother to hang out more. I'm not trying to. That's kind of like a paradigm I've been playing with lately. I got it from a C.S. Lewis poem, and that it's kind of like a different way of talking about that right brain, left brain hemisphere dynamic. And my sense, because I feel like there's a lot happening here where people are figuring things out. But I'm coming at it, and Lance does this. I'm coming at it from a slightly different perspective, and I don't think that more. I always get the hemispheres confused because I'm inherently right-brained. So the creative mystical side, emphasizing that isn't going to fix a propositional culture that I think we think we're in. We're actually going to have to get them to get along and hang out.
You know, Matt, I've heard I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just don't want it to get away from. I don't want this point to get away from me.
Yeah.
I've heard you talking about this on the Discord, and you know, the analogy that McGilchrist uses is the master and the emissary, right? So, like, I don't think they're equal, the hemispheres. They can't get along in that sense. They're not friends, right? This is not
best friends.
This. Well, you're also intuiting the maid and the mother. Okay,
They can be harmonious.
So and that's what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be harmonious, but there is a master and an emissary, right? So, like, maybe it would be more helpful to try to talk about it in those terms, and rather than talking about it as you know, equanimity or
it's like, because it's like a hierarchy. People, I think in the West, where like complete egalitarianism is equated as like the only fair thing.
Fair thing,
that's not what's going on. There is a hierarchy. The right brain is the master, but it's like it's how I talk about Christian hierarchy. Christ is the head, but it's a hierarchy where the higher serves the lower.
You're only giving Christ half a head when you say.
In what way is the right?
I'm not equating him to the right brain.
In what way is the right brain the master exactly though? Like I think like there's an abstraction perhaps, like the right brain does these sort of things and left does this, but in terms of neuroanatomy, like the more dominant parts that control. Or
let's go here, because I think this is where you're headed. This doesn't have anything to do with right and wrong. Okay?
No, that's not where I'm headed.
It doesn't mean that that the master is always right and the emissary is always wrong. Like,
that's not what I was talking about.
Okay.
Like, it was more like, are there parts of the right brain that sort of light up and they control the ones on the left?
Well,
that's why
I think McGilchrist would say that there's a ton of overlap between the two.
Yes.
Right? A ton of overlap. Go ahead.
We should not overstate too much some metaphor of the brain and then put together with the metaphor of the head, because then we end up having problems of epistemology and ontology. But to clarify, the problem of the divided brain is the master and the emissary stand for the master having a different kind of attention than the emissary. So a wide attention, a big picture things of the right hemisphere that control the left hand, by the way, and more detailed attention from the left brain that control the right hand. So the right hand is the precision hand, is controlled by your left side of the brain. So need particular attention to focus on the detail. Instead, the right brain, it keeps a look to the big
periphery.
Picture, so it can to the periphery, and it's also the more anxious mind that can see the threat while you are doing something with your left brain. You're also aware of what's going on with your right brain. So you need both to function.
Can I add a little seasoning here just to reinforce y'all's points? I think if we think about the human experience more as like a reuniting of these two, like if we think of the fall as being like a disuniting of these two, where we feel like we have to, and that our nature is trying to like pit them against each other and see who's going to win. If we think about them more synthetically together, I think we can start to talk, rather than saying right brain versus left brain, we can start to say what are the positive manifestations and the negative manifestations of both, because without the two, they're both going to fall into negative manifestations, I think. And
so
what I'm curious about.
To riff on what I was saying earlier, the right brain can't be pitted against the left brain.
No.
But the left brain can be pitted against the right brain.
Yeah.
You could just have dreams interpreting dreams. The right brain. You could just be seeing visions in vapor. That's
But you will
the,
never. But included in that, in the mosaic, there's always particularity. There will always be particularity, but you
But
won't see the
it'll never-
mosaic without the bigger picture.
it'll never resolve. It's like staring into a Mid-Journey AI image. It's just
No,
there's no
Well,
reality.
isn't that who Jesus is, though? Isn't that who Jesus is? Isn't he like a, what did you call it, a something AI image? Like it will never resolve. Like, do
Mid-Journey
we?
AI.
No.
Can you resolve your like? Can you give me a nice, neat, comprehensive summary of Jesus Christ?
Well, I think I see what you're doing. I like what you're doing, Sherry, but I think it's that relationship between these two paradigms that's unfathomable.
Okay, well,
It's
why
not two paradigms.
don't we break it down into our everyday life as a faithful follower of Christ? Is he the master? Are we the emissary? Is he the head? Are we the body?
You want me to use your tools? Of course, I would. If I use your tools, I'm gonna.
I mean, I don't
agree
want you
with-
to use them, but I'm just using mine because I don't know. I don't have any other tools.
Sure.
Can
Well, I
I
don't have
try
your
to-
tools.
Can I try to illustrate it this way? So I love talking about Michael Polanyi because I think this is very related to this. So like when he talks about subsidiary focal integration, I mean, this ties into all these things.
Yes, subsidy. Yes.
You focus on something, which is what the left brain does. It'll focus on something, but then you integrate it so that it becomes subsidiary, so that you no longer focus on it, so that you can focus on other things. The left brain is the focus, but you're integrating whatever you're focusing on into something else, which is the whole. You need both.
Yeah.
You need both. But if
Yeah.
you get stuck in the hyper focus thing, the focal thing, you actually can't see anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the negative manifestation of that.
There needs to be
No.
there needs to be the proper orientation, and I think Matt, you landed on it in your last little illustration there, where you said it's when they're harmonized, the phenomena of in between them harmonizing. That's the magic. I think that's where we're here too at. But I agree with kind of the Luke and the more sure. It's like there is still this hierarchy. Ian McGilchrist is a genius. He used that metaphorical analogy for a reason. That the master is the master, and I think, and then Luke just went to the technical illustration. I think that's exactly right. I think it's the attention, because that is because you don't want to get too loose with the metaphor, anyways, and that is where the most, because it comes from this prey predator phenomenon that we're sitting here having to pick out the detail of something to we can prey on without becoming preyed upon ourselves in the bigger picture of being a living organism in this dynamic reality. And so Luke just went to the technical move of that's exactly right. It's this integration of attention there's I think there's even two modes of attention. There's definitely two ways of processing the information of like the task focus, and then you're also just kind of spinning off and doing a variation of letting your attention run. So that dynamic of going through those poles is very, very common throughout the brain. That's another thing that the relevance realization kind of thing hints on. It's this tension hovering between those two poles. And
I just see it as
it's asymmetrical. There is the right brain as the master. And someone also mentioned, I just want to highlight, is the right could be the relational emphasized versus the left is the structural. It's this like the map and the territory thing. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think-
Can I add a little something else? This might take us in a slightly different direction that would hopefully Luke doesn't feel. Oh, did he leave?
Did Luke?
Yeah, he said he had to
feeling
leave
bad about picking up
in the private chat.
If this is something I know, Lance knows this phrase. What you win them with, you win them to. You hear that a lot in. I think that was like a modern evangelical phrase. Like if you win them with a rock concert, you win them to a rock concert. For worship or something, that's typically how it was used in the 2000s. If you And I'm wondering, and this is not a criticism, this is just like thinking about how these things are patterning in 2024. I'm wondering if people are being won with a sense that Eastern Orthodoxy is the alternative to rationalism. And so they're being won to Eastern Orthodoxy through that. And there's figures like Jonathan Pajot that I think have a more balanced approach. They're willing to talk about heresy, for instance. The other side of that braid. I think he's got his maid and mother hanging out together. That takes time, but I think a lot of people might be attracted to a different tradition that they feel like is an opponent to the modern culture, which really isn't on some level it's propositional. Maybe a lot of Christian traditions have been propositional that people are moving away from, but modern culture doesn't seem very propositional, right? It seems very relational. It seems very dreams interpreting dreams. And maybe we're just trying to find a way to redeem the culture that we're in that has relativism on a pedestal, that has a temple to the unknown God, which they call subjective, their feelings, personalism by a secular name, and we're trying to find a way to do that better, which I admire. So that's really why I'm here, because I think people have a strong sense, their barometers going off saying we got to do this better, but there's also this play of like, I need to find a tradition that I'm finding on YouTube that doesn't look like what I think we're trying to get away from in the Anglosphere. And I'm seeing a lot of confusion, frankly. So to color that a bit farther, I'm being very confusing in how I'm even explaining this.
Yeah, I'm so confused by you sometimes, Matt. Like,
I know.
I could map onto that, Sherry, because
some of that landed.
Wait,
I'm an
I got
evangelical.
you.
So I'm an evangelical who swam in the same waters that Matt swam.
Yeah,
so
Lance can explain it better than I can.
Well, no, I shared it. I would say this, and it's the same thing. Why are you here, right? I think there are some common threads, but there is a vast myriad of reasons why people would come to the TLC. I think as it would relate to, I think that thing that you're trying to map onto, that I think some people might be running into orthodoxy as an arc away from this, what you would call maybe more Enlightenment Christianity or something like that, right? And so there are some people people are going for a myriad of reasons. Like that's why you ask, why are you here? Like, and some people don't even really know. They might think they know, but they don't really know why they're there. Like my reason is my reason is not that at its core, and it's different. But I see why you're mapping that into the heart of this. I did think so. Sherry or Matt, in the private chat, that C.S. Lewis poem that Matt referred to, I've shared a link. I don't have a very good voice, so maybe you guys are better at reading poetry.
You read it?
This is a Grail Country Scream. So when you're saying why you're here, I think that poem beautifully illustrates a lot of like what we're talking about here.
I can read it if you want.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, Sherry, please read it. You've got the best voice for it.
Set on the soul's acropolis, the reason stands, a virgin armed, commercing with celestial light, and he who sins against her has defiled his own. Virginity, no cleansing makes his garment white. So clear is reason. But how dark, imagining, warm, dark, obscure, and infinite, daughter of night. Dark is her brow, the beauty of her eyes with sleep is loaded, and her pain, oh gosh, sorry, I should put my glasses on, is loaded, and her pains are long in her delight. Tempt not Athene, wound not in her fertile pains. Demeter, wound not in her fertile pains Demeter, nor rebel against the mother right. Oh, who will reconcile in me both maid and mother? Who make me in a concord of the depth and height? who make imagination's dim exploring touch ever report the same as intellectual sight. Then could I truly say, and not deceive, then wholly say that I believe. I didn't do a very good job of that.
That was great.
That was so beautiful.
Come on, do you disagree with that sentiment? I know it's just a poem, it's not scripture, but
I would never disagree with imagination, but you know, like what I like in here is who make imagination's dim exploring touch ever report the same as intellectual sight. This is something that's really been on my heart, because that's why I went through the imagination essay by George MacDonald, and then I talk about it. I talk about it all the time, because people think that the imagination is just a side topic, where I would say the imagination is everything. The reason that we live in this world that John Vervaeke describes, that McGilchrist describes, is because we have no imagination. That's why we're stuck in the place that we are. And we think, because it's a dim exploring touch, that it has nothing to do with our intellectual sight. MacDonald talks about, and I actually pointed this out to you, I think, in the Discord, Matt.
Sorry, I haven't seen it yet. I saw some.
Well, no, this was a while ago, but remember I posted that excerpt from the imagination essay, where George MacDonald talks about the utmost importance of the intellect, right? But it has to. But George MacDonald says the imagination is the architect, and the intellect is the workman. Okay, so this is the same analogy that McGilchrist uses.
There's that hierarchy again. Oh my gosh.
The master and the emissary, right?
Yeah.
But come on, Matt. I mean, you're an artist. You know that you cannot sit down and labor over a piece of art that you're going to make with no imagination. Where do you get your ideas? Where do they come from?
Can we say upstream, downstream? How about that? That's still flat. That makes me happy, but it gives you the one deriving from the other, which should make you happy.
But the thing is, though, when you sit down to draw something, you submit to it. You're submitting yourself to it. You can't say that that's not happening. You're under its spell. You're doing its bidding.
I can make another example for Matt that connect this problem of the hierarchy of the two sides. One of the fall of the West in the last 20 years that I've noticed was the people start reading more and more of essays and less of novels, at least in what I see, in my opinion. And the more novels I was reading, the more people were reading essays and treatises and papers. So, but what happened there is now you see the problem on the left and the right brain. So you are learning a lot. You're learning a lot of information. You're getting a lot of information, but you are losing the capacity to look for what you want to, for what you care about, or to even discover what you care about. Let's say relevance realization in this sense. You don't know what you care about anymore when you are full of information, but you don't have an imagination. So that's a big part of the loss of meaning. That's why if there is a hierarchical aspect of the master and of the emissary, is in this sense. You cannot just be full of information, because you end up losing all the meaning and the motivation then eventually to do anything. But it's the imagination that creates for you the frame in which you can actually do or get to do something, anything, artistic or not.
This is something else to think about, Matt. Maybe is this is actually what Peterson is getting at, even if he doesn't realize it, when he says clean your room. Because now you're aware of the whole thing, okay? Like, it's not just a place where heaps of things are stacked up, right? And like, this is the image I have when Tunji's talking about reading essays and having all this information. It's like having a room that's just full of stuff, okay? But it doesn't have a context. It's the room itself is, you can't even see the room anymore, right? For what it is.
I just see, I have a sense that there are pitfalls with.
There will always be, because people will misunderstand it, and this is
you can't see a forest without there being trees. Which is playing off your clean the room.
You actually can. You can see. You can go out and see an empty field that was actually a forest that has been cut down completely, maybe even burned.
But that's not a forest anymore.
You can still see that. You can see, but you still can
it was a forest.
Yes,
but you can't. It was an ex-forest.
No, I'll go with that.
It's a forest that has completely been destroyed.
I think
it's a former forest, but you can still see the essence of what it was.
You can see the forest from the past, maybe.
Yeah. But it's still
admirable. It's admirable what you guys are doing, and I think if you'll allow me to say this and trust me that this is not said critically, I think people are being won. There's a dominant theme. People are coming to Eastern Orthodoxy for all kinds of reasons. But there is a theme in this corner specifically where people do see Eastern Orthodoxy as a answer to half their brain.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you there.
Right. But they don't want to talk about
there is.
They want to hang out in the forest.
Absolutely. There is
that's
this
cool. That's not said critically. That's just
is it not possible? Is it, Matt? Is it not possible? Because I know this is true for me in my case, that the world that they live in is the same world that the Eastern Orthodox Church lives in. Okay. Like, I was homeless as I was not a churchgoer for 23 years because I couldn't go in to a propositional setting. It felt like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's not where I lived. It wasn't that I didn't like what they were saying. I didn't know any better. As far as I was concerned, what they were saying was all good. Okay. But there was something about the place, the home, let's say, that I went into that made me uncomfortable. Okay. Because I don't live there. Like, I'm not that kind of person. And then I encounter this other place, and I'm like, oh, I know this place. This is familiar to me. I understand it. Right. So, like, I would like, trust me when I say I was not converted. Okay. To Orthodoxy. I would not classify myself as someone who was converted to Orthodoxy. I went there because it was an extension of what I already knew. All right. And
I think
so
I'm saying that, because that our culture, we've got this. There's an academy where we think truths about the cosmos are handled. It's very far away. It's out of. It's very disconnected from our home. Our lived experience, and our lived experience in our culture feels a lot closer to Eastern Orthodoxy, and I'm agreeing with you on that. So I'm saying people are saying this is a way to redeem the home, the mother, the Demeter side of our lived experience, which is really the dominant, our day-to-day lived experience usually operates through that paradigm. I get it.
And when he was talking about Athena, that's reason, right? So he's laying that out there, and he has this thing of reason, and Demeter is tied into imagination, and so you have these two things, and so he's struggling with. He was a deeply analytical thinker, and yet he had, obviously, which we've seen with the way that he was a high creative, and he had this imagination side, and reason would take him away from believing in Christianity in some ways, but then also would lead him there, and then he has the imagination. Imagination can lead you to imagine it doesn't exist. All these things have to come together in this beautiful marriage, and I would say
the imagination would just be lies without Athena, is what he was saying.
I can't. So what I will say, for me, someone who pursued for his basically most of his entire adult life, I used to say that I wished. So the very line of this, Lord, help me in my unbelief, like that last line of the poem, that's what struck out to me. And one of the things that I struggled with as a young man who had this great desire to know, like to really know and not have doubt, right? Because I saw someone, like I have an aunt who is a very powerful woman. I mean, she is a faithfully powerful woman, and I could see her faith, and I didn't have that, So anyway, I pursued, and then I had this total experience in kind of a Holy Spirit. And so, but I was struggling with, I was seeing, and people know this about me, I was seeing the church collapsing and things just failing to work. And then I also was experiencing that in my own life. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak in prayer. So I have all these struggles. But when I went there, so I didn't watch a Pajot video and then all of a sudden become an Orthodox. That is not my story, right? But I started to pursue this thing. And when I went to my first divine liturgy, I had an integration happen in me immediately. And it didn't happen over, I studied for 30 days. This was a 30-year journey for me. And there was an integration. I brought a charismatic heart with me into that moment. Like Metropolitan Jonah says, charismatics and Orthodox are kissing cousins and are the closest thing. So I brought this, I'm open to angels. Like I'm open to the thin veil of God being everywhere present, filling all things. That's what charismatics get really well. Problem is that goes off the rails in most every instance very quickly. Like I saw that too. Like I was hesitant of that part of it, of those things. So
yeah, there's not much Athena there, right?
And I had that. And so, but one of the things I was staring at, so here's the reason side of me. When I was in the liturgy, you know what I was hearing? Bible. Like, because what they were saying was biblical. The words were biblical. Then I was seeing things in the Bible, like my Father's house is a house of prayer. I'm like, oh, this is the house of prayer. Like, so I'm having all these things going on at once, right? I'm trying to describe what this is. The other thing in the apse, so I have the dome that's above me, right? Which is wild. Then I have this apse, which is the Panagia, which is the Virgin Mary with Christ, right there. So I'm getting this feminine, like I'm getting this mother, and I was raised to not be a Mary worshiper. That was said in my house, okay? So any rate, but all this stuff is happening to me, and there was this integration, because what you're also immersing yourself in the middle of is the liturgy's poetry, right? It's biblical poetry and it's imagination. So again,
but
like
it's very structured poetry. It's 1600-year-old poetry that has a lot of Athena in it.
It's a fireplace for the fire. So to get to your question, right? So you're saying, did I have this integration of reason and charismaticism, imagination? Because it takes a certain amount of imagination to be a charismatic, to be honest with you. Like if you can map onto that, if that makes sense, right? Like you're open, you're highly open. So all these things came in this order, And yet there's a lot of chaos. Like they're singing this one thing, and then a priest is saying this thing, and then people are going in and out of this thing. It's like there's a lot going on too at the same time. It's like, what? And smells and bells. So, and then as I further went into it, I would say this very simply, the reason part of me can go into the depth and read all this stuff that I read, like all the high reason stuff, like you can get into the Neoplatonic and all this other stuff. So you can think about all these things. Like, so all the reason stuff is there because there's this deep depth and richness. And then on the other side, there is this high imagination part of this thing that's going on, because you're going into this, what you're doing when you go to an Orthodox service is you're leaving earth and you're participating in heaven, and Christ is the one who's serving up the divine liturgy. Like you're mystically participating in this.
Yes.
So
there's an order.
That's a lot of me.
Yeah.
So at any rate, so if you would say what happened to me is in Orthodoxy, it's all the things.
I agree. Yeah. So, okay. So can I just give me like 30 seconds so that I think I got to go ish.
Well, wait a minute. Let me just
add to Lance and I want to agree with Lance and Sherry. No. Please give me this.
Well, Luke wanted you. I think Luke wanted you to hear this excerpt from Cormac McCarthy that Andre's got lined up.
Yeah, I've got it lined up. It's only a minute.
And then maybe after that, so you don't go, we could hear the Cormac thing, and then you could do your spiel if you can hang on to your thoughts.
Okay.
Could we do that? Just because
yeah.
I think that Luke wanted you to hear this. So
okay.
Yeah. Do I have to add it?
Lance has to do it. I think that's
Okay,
what.
there it is.
There we go. Okay.
Conversation or pieces of when I'm talking to you. I don't know what I'm going to say next. I know what the subject is. I have a vague sense, but I'm going to say something, and it will be in a coherent sentence that I will say, and you will understand. But it's not like some part of my brain is making up sentences and then whispering to me, and then I repeat them. That doesn't make any sense. And it's not like the next sentence I'm going to say to you. It's an idea, but it's not a sentence, and yet almost immediately I will form it into a sentence.
Exactly.
It's like when you try and explain something to somebody and you say, let me think about that. How can I put this? Okay, put what? What's the this that you're trying to put? You're trying to put it in words, but you don't have them yet. But the idea is there, but it's not, the idea exists independently of language. We had this conversation or pieces of it when I'm.
Yeah, that's it. Just looked over. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's pretty strong stuff. Can I? Okay, so can I say that if our culture was different and perceived differently by this little corner, that people might be attracted to Orthodoxy for its order, and many have been, for it being a refuge of a Athenian refuge from the chaos of the outside storm. I think an argument could be made that a lot of people find it to be the opposite of what is at least described in the Lucan sections of Orthodoxy in this quarter. And I think that's interesting too, because they're both right, because it's really just what they're being attracted in by a particular dimension of what that particular, the liturgy, which is imagination plus order. I don't see a hierarchy going on. No one's changing Chrysostom's words, no matter how many dreams and visions you have. There's a science to it that is meant to channel the imagination. It's both and I think that's really powerful, and is a reason why it's big. It's part of a revival in the Anglo-West. So all of that is not criticism. All of that is just me trying to understand it as a small Orthodox, which maybe old will allow me to claim. But
to me, it's telling. Your leading statement into this was, what was that phrase you used? It's what they're being one.
I know it's confusing for if what they're initially attracted to is what keeps them there, and how they frame
Yeah, but you used a like a Protestant cone. What they're being one to, or what they're being one to is
one
what they're
with is what they're being one to.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
WON.
And you know, I'm gonna point out the thing that nobody notices, because that's just how I see the world. I find it really interesting that the word one is used in that sentence. One, WON, right? Because I don't see this as a winners and losers situation. I don't see this as somebody, if there's no trophies for me in this thing we call life. And you know, like people on the Discord, in the Bridges of Meaning Discord, they used to talk about how they felt like they had to stay where they were planted, which is another Protestant cone. And I just disagreed with that. I just said, why would you do that? Like, if you were an alcoholic, would you stay where you were planted? No. Right? If you had a metanoia in your life, what is that? What does metanoia mean? It means a complete 180. Hello. Okay.
So could you help? Can you resolve that a little bit? Like, so
I'm working on
like a
it.
winning
I'm getting
strategy
there.
mindset?
I always take the long road. Okay. So why would you stay anywhere for any length of time? If you feel like now your consciousness has evolved to a place in which you no longer find yourself physically, why would you not go seek out that lost pearl? Right? Why would you not go seek out the treasure? I think it's foolishness to bury your talent under the tent and sit on it. Right? So
I think that's true, Sherry. And to thine own self be true. I think actually Jesus multiple times in the New Testament basically says, unless you leave mother or father. And if you think about what really happened to a lot of people, what they were speaking to is making this decision to follow Christ. It's going to take you outside of family. It's going to take you outside of the culture you're in, because you're not going to be able to participate in certain festivals or whatever. You are setting yourself outside. So I agree, Sherry, which is, I understand the wisdom of it. And a lot of times too, there's a deep love and nostalgia, particularly if you came from a good home. Like if I look at Paul Vanderklay, his grandparents and his parents were such a amazing example for him of love and service, and how they raised their children and how they cared for people. Like, it would almost feel like abandoning that would be, I would get that. But at the same time, if you've been confronted with something new, like a further revelation or whatever, people should never use that as the reason why, because of my ancestry, I'm going to stay here. So I can't go over here. That being said, Chinese farmer, maybe, people do things for a lot of reasons and they have to live their own life. But I do agree. I've always kicked back at that too, Sherry.
Well, the two things come to my mind on that subject. One of them is Abraham, get up and go. Well, Moses too, for that matter, and then the other one is, wait a minute, it was there, and now it's gone. Sorry.
Jacob?
No, not Jacob.
I think it reminds me of.
Oh! I know now. It was Paul preaching in was it the Acropolis? At the Acropolis, to the he says, "Look, I see your plaque here, to the unknown God." Right? I got a name for you. I got a name
that's
here.
All that I know, like winning and losing.
No, let me finish. So I've got a name, right, for your unknown God. If you were one of the people there, and there was apparently one guy there, was it what's his name? Dionysus, or no, someone, the Areopagite? I can't remember.
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly. If you were there and you truly were worshiping the unknown God, okay, and somebody said to you, he has a name, and that resonated with you because your heart was in the place to recognize that name, what would be the next wise move to make?
Yeah, you've been won over by that.
One?
Absolutely.
One?
Well,
Yeah.
here's where I'll push back at you, Sherry, which is like what he mentioned was a very popular phrase, and I think two things can be true. One is there is a lot of winning and losing that's going on in all sides, which isn't the right thing, and yet orthodoxy is based on the principle of Christus Victor, not penal substitutionary atonement. And the evangelion is actually the good news, and the good news is not a Roman road or anything else. The good news is that the king has won. He has defeated his enemy in battle. And they would go out and share the evangelion out in that time. Okay. So the king would say, hey, I won this battle. So you guys, understand what happened. So there is a both and in that. I understand what you're saying. We were in a win or lose zero-sum game a lot, which I don't think that's it. Yet, Orthodox Christianity is built on Christ's victory over death, trampling death by death. So there is an element of winning in Orthodox understanding.
Well, I'm not talking about winning, even if the Orthodox understand that.
No, I understand. I just was putting that out there.
Yeah. And
this is why I appreciate you, Sherry. And then I do have to take up. I got to pick up and go like Paul did. I appreciate you, Sherry, because you are doing something. I'm not going to say very Protestant. I will hesitate to say that, but you're doing something very profoundly, maybe mystical, certainly very wise. Which is you're not just taking a received lexicon to frame your spiritual journey and just copy paste patterning that. You're willing to operate out from your experience and find the words you need to express where that journey goes, even if people, the institutional side, which we're characterizing as a theta sometimes, I don't think that properly characterizes it. But you're not just going to say what the institutional thing says.
I don't even know what they think.
Orthodoxy has a lot of institutional things you got to say. Lance clarifying them very well. So you're willing to buck even that.
Well, see, the thing is, okay, now I'll give you a little insider information, like in here, this place. I do not read doctrinal books. I don't do it. I don't want to know what they think because I don't want to be inhibited about overstepping any boundaries because I'm not a boundary person. And that can be my downfall sometimes. Okay. Like I'm not saying that it's a good thing always, but I intentionally remain ignorant because I think that's the only way I have the right eyes to see things.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
You're putting blinders on. Hold on, this is not critical. You're putting
I know.
You're covering your eyes so that you can touch better. How about that?
Yes, that's exactly
so
right.
You can focus a particular sense.
Yep.
And purify and heighten that particular sense.
That's exactly right.
Well, and that impulse is beautiful. And that impulse is good, Sherry, because actually what my priest told me was he warned me against reading academic things and doctrinal stuff or whatever. He just said, read the saints, right? So there's this deep intuition. At the same side, also what Christ talked about is losing your life for his sake, right? So there's this again, the tension, right? Is the losing so if we that language,
honestly,
I understand I understand why you're pushing back at that. Mm-hmm. But there is this in between, and I do think the other thing that saints do, which is kind of what you're doing, is kind of out in the wilderness, just living it, right, like a hermit or whatever. Like there also is that strong tendency, and I don't think there's It's coming back to the whole thing that Luke was talking about here, which is the in between, the coincidence of opposites, the tension. And I do think the thing that you're kicking against most is something that I think makes a lot of sense. And I think it's some things that attracts people here is trying to get out of that either or dogmatic, try to have a new pair of glasses, a new way of seeing things, how to live into it, and so on and so forth. So I think the way you're doing things also lives within orthodoxy, because we've seen the saints, right? Like what you're talking about is a saint would talk the way you're talking. And so that's okay. And by the way, they're the saints. And then it's okay to have the other aspects too. Like, so your path is there is a time and a place without history for the purpose of the advancement of the kingdom, or whatever you want to call these sorts of things, that you need people like you needed Gregory Palamas when Hesychasm was under attack, right? You needed someone who could come out, and the monks on Mount Athos, because he was educated and he could do it. He didn't want to do this, but they called him out. Hey, go defend us in Constantinople for this whole idea of hesychasm. So everyone plays their part in the body. Everyone has their role, and your role is right, beautiful, good, and true, and we appreciate that. But I think there are also other people have other roles that they have to play.
Well, I mean, this is the interesting thing from my own experience, is that I actually find in conversation with, like, my priest, for example, or reading someone like John Bear, that I do not actually stray outside of dogma. And I don't know it. Okay?
Absolutely.
So the people who set up the boundaries and the fences with their dogma and their dogmatism have actually decided to forego the freedom. How do I want to put this? The freedom that can be experienced by living within those boundaries, because this is really difficult here, because they intuitively know that that is the place where they can optimally become, right? That they can optimally experience that journey of becoming. Whereas the dogmatist spends most of his time as a watchman on the tower, yelling or shooting at the people that try to cross the boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they end up missing out on their own freedom. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm saying this properly, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. So, like, I'm not endorsing people. I'm not saying people shouldn't read books. I'm not saying that people should just run around, intuitively doing this and that. I mean, it wouldn't matter to me if they followed my advice, like, I don't think it's wrong advice. I also don't think it's wrong to take the time to really look closely at something, and you know me well enough, Lance, to know that when I think that something has been expressed wrongly or misunderstood, mm-hmm. I'll be the first person mm-hmm. to correct it. But I didn't mm-hmm. get my information out of a textbook. And that's mm-hmm. always really surprising to me, because I said this to Martin Shaw, when I got into the Orthodox Church, when I started, actually going to catechism classes. It was like God said to me, look, I want to show you that, because I doubted everything that I thought I knew, right? I doubted my own experiences. I doubted my own thoughts about things, and my own tendency to maybe disagree with someone. I'm like, well, how can I disagree? I don't have any references, right? I can't point to so-and-so said that, so it must be true. It was just coming from me. right? And then I went into the Orthodox Church, and God said, I just want you to know that this, what I've taught you up to this point, it's here. It's all here, right? And so my intuition was confirmed in the church and not the other way around, right? If that makes any sense. So anyway, I have to go, unfortunately, but I don't want anyone, because people, whenever you say something, everybody wants to jump on it and say, oh, that's wrong, or she's right. I'm both of those things. I'm right and I'm wrong. Okay. So, I'm not saying that, and, people have to go out and do what I did. I'm not saying that everyone should be an Orthodox Christian. I'm also not saying that you should never read a textbook. I'm not saying any of that. Okay. I just want to be really clear, because I don't want anyone to grab something that I said and run with it like a crazy person.
The appropriate TLC caveats, right?
I mean, I'm in the middle. Like, I've got no opinion on orthodoxy, so what you say makes sense, and also I could see people trying to disagree with it. You're right and you're wrong, but
I'm always really stunned at if I say that I'm an Orthodox Christian, people immediately assume that I have a set of dogmatics. Like, I've got this kind of, I'll defend the church to my death. I don't go to church. I don't have a church. Okay. I have only ever worshiped from my home.
Okay.
Before I was an Orthodox Christian and after, because there isn't one near me. Okay. So, when I go to a divine liturgy, what I have there that I don't have here is communion in every sense of the word. I have the Eucharist, and I have other people to worship with, which I don't have in my room. Okay. In my room, it's just me all the time. So
I agree with you definitely, but like 90% of experiences I've had with Eastern Orthodox Christians has been pretty not active conversion, but pretty confrontational. It's like, well, why haven't you gone to Orthodox yet? Why? I'm going to defend the church.
Have you only ever had those online?
Well, yes. That's the only experience. The majority of my Christian experiences have all been online too. So I'm saying, out of all Judaism, Christianity, Catholicism, everything, Orthodox specifically is where people will defend it. They'll will go detail about it, and they're pretty sort of like the Ortho Bros type thing. They're a little bit abrasive about it.
Yeah. Well, John Van Veen did a whole video based on a talk that Father Stephen DeYoung gave on his disagreement. Actually, it was Father Stephen Damick answered a question on Lord of Spirits. That's what it was, about tongues in the Orthodox Church. And what Father Stephen Damick said was, in my opinion, really out of line. Really out of line. Okay. And then I watched John's video, and I was shocked at what Father Stephen Damick said. And then I talked to John, and I said, because he made this hour-long monologue about it. And I said to him, John, stop watching online orthodoxy. Seriously, go to an Orthodox church, talk to an Orthodox priest, stand in a liturgy with Orthodox people, because it is not the same thing. It is not.
What did he say, if you can summarize it?
Stephen Damick?
Yeah, the one.
Oh, he talked about it in terms of demonic possession, and he belittled it. And I just thought,
I get it.
Because I've talked to priests about it, and they said, oh, yeah, but we just don't think you need to have that experience to be a Christian, which is what some Pentecostal churches believe, right? In order to be saved, you have to speak in tongues.
Okay.
And so Orthodox, the priests that I spoke to about it said, yeah, of
Well,
course.
here's the thing that can be quite maddening about Orthodoxy. It is to my wife to some extent. Is it's such a big tent? Is
It's not
that you have a Bishop Christos Ware, who's a bishop, and he's in proper communion, and he believes apokatastasis and a hopeful universalism. You can also have another bishop who believes something that looks like more like eternal separation, and yet they're both still in valid communion or there. Like, it allows this.
Well, that's
kind of
because the
breadth.
scriptures aren't clear on those things, Lance, and they
Right.
have they actually have the honesty to give
Right.
that, allow that tension to be there, right?
Yeah, and one of the things I'd say, the thing is, I think you're kicking back at like the one thing about the winning and losing, because I think that's actually is Orthodox too, and the paradox. So, for example, the Christus Victor, and I'll probably bother people with this because I probably need to lead too. Is like, I didn't get that from dogma. I got that from what I sing every Paschal season. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and to those in the tombs he has granted life. So that's the liturgy, like that. So when you talk about the liturgy, right, and we sing that over and over and over between from Pascha, we sing it the first night at the Paschal liturgy, and then we sing that all the way up, through the Ascension. And so it's such a part of me that the trampling down death by death piece is a victory.
Yeah, like
death.
I mean,
yeah. So any rate, so like the thing which I like about us having the conversations, and I like you explaining yourself and why you're doing those things, was, from my perspective, where I got that from liturgy and singing and so on and so forth. And it wasn't
Christus
from reading
Victor,
a dogmatic
though,
book.
Lance, like Christus Victor to me, and maybe this is my feminine side, doesn't mean it's not the same as the Protestant.
Yes, yeah. No, yeah.
It's a
absolutely.
universal.
It's
It's a universal victory. It's a reconciliation. It's apokatastasis. It's a reconciliation of all things, which is a healing. Okay, it doesn't mean orthodoxy wins. It doesn't mean
What
I
is
am
Christus Victor?
victorious Christ.
Okay.
So he's seen as victorious, but he's seen as victorious,
and he's victorious over death, like
because
trampling down
for
death.
the same reason he was seen as victorious when he healed the leper. Okay, because he has the ability to heal diseases. Okay, that he can bring things together and knit them together. Okay, and so, like, it, to me, in Protestantism, and I really recoil at the kind of, it's militant language to me. Okay, it's defensive language. And like Michael Leidy said years ago, it's all about winners and losers. Okay. And when you project that onto Orthodoxy, you're going to find it there, because like Andre just said, there's a bunch of ortho bros out there that are, carrying a flag and a couple of swords or whatever.
Well, and even when you do the trampling, that what I just sang there, what is that? By the way, that's a universal thing. It doesn't say death for some or whatever. No, trample death by death. So that's, and to those in the tombs, not some, not a few, to those in the tombs, he has granted life, right? So that in and of itself, like you say, kicks back at some of those other things. So I understand completely. I understand completely the spirit that you're kicking back at, because actually that's one of the things that this little corner has really exposed in me, Sherry. And I mentioned this, the arguing, the trying to win, right? Like to try and be right and thinking I was right and trying to fight with other people. Like, I'm a lawyer, right? And my mom said I came out of the womb arguing. One of the biggest things that I think this little corner has done, and then also practicing the Orthodox way and watching saints, is to try and get me out of the zero-sum game, winner or loser or win the argument game, and the certainty game.
Yeah. I'm just reading this. It says, so in Revelation, John looks at the victory of the Lamb, who, as Lord of Lords and King of Kings, has defeated the beast and his adherents. And the Lord brings his chosen and faithful believers with him in this victory. And John calls the faithful those who overcome. They have overcome their accuser Satan by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and have the promised blessings of all kinds. I'd say overcoming is winning in that sense.
That's right. That's exactly right, Andre. And you just gave me goosebumps, because that happens to be my favorite topic, is that we are overcomers. And it is by what? And I'll cry talking about this. It is by the word of our testimony. It is because we live.
Mm-hmm.
It is our life. Right? Mm-hmm. This life that we have is the gift that God gave us. And it is that testimony, it is our life that saves us.
Amen.
Yeah, amen to that. So I think that's like appropriate language to like use the word winning. But when you point to militant language, I haven't found any yet, but I can imagine where it would pop up. I just looked up Christus Victor.
I grew up.
Okay.
I grew up with the militant version of
right. Okay.
these things, right? Where victory means I'm right and you're wrong. That's the thing that I can't handle. Like that's the place where you'll see me get really angry. Like I might just pick you up and put you under my arm and carry you into a tower. I'm just kidding. But there is a thing in me that just rejects that wholly.
I mean, like I grew up as an atheist, and like I sort of felt like that from the Christians. As like anything I could say to them, they're like, well, no, I know I'm right and you're wrong, but it wasn't like in a shameful way. It was sort of like, there's no way I could be wrong and you could be right. It's always, I'm right, you're wrong. It obviously didn't affect me to that, like how it did to you, but it was a bit militant and sort of like the certainty.
In atheism?
Well, yeah, being like growing up secular as an atheist, like not going to church or anything, and then not any conversation with a Christian, but like the topic comes up and trying to even have like a fair discussion. It's like, well, I won't concede that I could be wrong and you could be right. I'm definitely right, and you are either also right, but you're probably wrong. It's
George MacDonald has this great line in the faith sermon where he says, I'm just going to read it really quick. I promise it'll be quick. He says, the evidence of things not seen, I cannot, as I say, find any meaning in that all. But the true meaning is the most profound fact in human history. It is the trial or the proving of things not seen. Upon that turns the life of every man. So he just takes this right back to your everyday life, okay? Especially perhaps in the present day. This thing of faith means the whole recognized fellowship of man to God and God's fellows. It is the right position of the human soul, which is made to understand the truth. The right position of that soul towards the truth. That is faith partly. But you must remember that whenever you begin to speak of anything true, divine, heavenly, beyond the human, you cannot speak of it at all without speaking in some measure wrongly about it. We have no words. We have no phrases. We have no possible combination of sentences. No, we have no forms of intellect that do more than represent fragmentarily the greatness of the things that belong to the very vital being of our nature. Much, much foolish talk has been uttered about faith. you know, and I have to go. So since I'm here, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this very last bit from George MacDonald. Do you hope for anything, friends? Thank God that comes from your faith. No man that has not faith can hope. But do not think the world is going all to the devil. There is a better and stronger faith coming. It was a great thing that this foolish, actionless kind of religion should vanish, and that a simple, obedient, hoping, trusting life should take its place. The world is not worse than it was. Many, even of those that do not believe in God, have faith toward their neighbor. And he's talking about an atheist, okay? Even those who do not believe are, on the whole, are better in this century than those that did not believe in the last. Only we are a set of foolish men and women who simply talk and nothing else, neither believe nor disbelieve, who have neither the soul nor the heart to be in earnest about anything. God has a hold upon them too, and he has but to place his hand on them to make them feel it. But friends, what we have to do is let our light shine. Do you get any light? Let it shine. I do not mean be an example to other people. You have no business to set yourself up for an example. You have to be and do, and that is letting the light shine. It ought not to be possible to mistake a Christian for a man of the world. His very dealings with every man that comes near him have something to show, something that Christ would have done that a man of the world would not do. Tell me how you would like Christ to come in upon you at any moment in the middle of your business talk. Would you be ready to turn to him and say, Master, this is how I'm saying the thing to my friend. This is how I see it in the light of your love. Would you be ready for that? Or do you think that a great part of your being in your life can be conducted upon other laws than Christian? If a man does that, he's altogether wrong. Christ is God, the all in all, or nothing at all. If we were as the bush, if every Christian were as the bush that burned with fire, that would be the shining our light before men. Atheism would soon vanish. Unbelief would draw in its horns, reproved, judged, condemned by the very presence of faith. I would have you then, friends, remember that faith is the trying of the thing that you don't see and you cannot be sure about. A thing that you don't see and which, not seeing, you have doubt about, you can yet try. That is faith. And if you are honest, that will be a great opportunity and a great help to you. It will start a fresh faith, which you have not thought of before, and give your life a new start. Faith is intended to put to the test of the unseen world of truth, love, law, hope, redemption. God grant us all faith enough to carry on from point to point till the faith shall vanish into light. And we have never to think about faith more, nor to think about church more, nor the Bible more, nor prayer more. But our whole being shall be a delighted consciousness of the presence of God and his Christ. Sorry, I don't know why I'm so emotional. But anyway, that's my.
I think you're fighting to tell the more beautiful story always, Jerry. Right? And I think the thing that I love about these conversations is when they map onto it, or when people start sharing parts of the reason why it matters to them. And by the way, anybody who's out there, she keeps reading. I'm just going to say this. This is George MacDonald's Unspoken Sermons. It's the Roland Hind edited and abridged version.
Can you put the book title in the comments for people, perhaps? If you
would get this book, just George MacDonald's Sermons, Creation in Christ. If you would read through this, because Sherry's been reading, she reads a lot out of this. The justice sermons in here, there's faith, there's all sorts of things. This is for me, it's one of the most life-changing things I've ever read, and I keep going back to it. Father George. So, I need to leave too, Sherry. We'll have to shut this down on Grail Country.
Found a link. I'll drop it.
Any final words, Sherry, before we sign off?
Well, I'm sorry I dominated the conversation, and I know in my heart that I was angry. But there's some things I feel like I can be angry with.
Amen. All right.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Luke, for starting us off. Everyone have a good Saturday.
Yeah. Bye,
Sunday
guys.
for me. See you later.